the aggression that Archie and Slay tried to instigate. Levi walks face first into Svenskeren, lying in wait to turn it around. And again, here's this great TP from Onsa, joining the fight well before Stark can, but Stark is the one that's cleaning up the back end of this fight, and the action isn't even over yet.
Again, another invade from Gigabyte Marines, another blue buff that they will be securing away from TSM. Levi, Archie, and Stark now looking to make a play with Slay already here in the top side. Svenskeren going to be bursted low, going to be taken down. Haunter 2, a little bit more damage will do it, and that is 2 for free for the Gigabyte Marines as Biofrost rotates up, but can't do anything with it.
So the Gigabyte Marines, they forget bottom lane, they move to the top half knowing that they have a big minion wave available to them. They set up for the dive, and this was the clean macro play that we talked about from the Gigabyte Marines in their game versus Lion. They will not be able to get themselves the first tower of the game, but overall they still come out positive. They get themselves 2 kills, they get themselves control over the top half of the map. And this is just great play from the Marines.
And that's that trigger pull we were talking about earlier, right? That's how these guys are so decisive in saying, look, this is the play, this is what we're doing, go. Everybody get on it, let's make it happen. Of course, credit over to Wild Turtle from TSM, who was also able to recognize that massive rotation, push up as quickly as he could, and just by a split second, get the turret first blood as the blue buff resets itself.
Optimus, why?
That feels bad, man.
Oh,
He's gonna waste that much more time on it. But it might feel bad, but at least it feels better than losing your blue buff.
He might still lose it.
Maybe. If he ends up losing this just because it has to reset, okay, okay.
He's got it, he got it,
All right,
guys.
it's secured. Optimus gets what he came for.
All right, so top lane goes down in favor of Gigabyte Marines. TSM respond with the bottom lane tower. Now the arrow's available.
Arrow misses, but the rest of the damage is there. Stepping away from that arrow puts him right in the waiting arms of the Strangled Thorns, as now Svenskeren's going to be taken down in retaliation, a 1-for-1. TSM finds the setup they were looking for, but the reaction from the Gigabyte Marines is swift.
Now TSM, they realized that they got to the river much faster, so they set up vision control, and they punish Archie for trying to clear out this vision by himself. But every single time, the Gigabyte Marines are responding. They are always trying to fight TSM if they are the instigators. Now, Jungler is down for Team Solar Mid. Gigabyte Marines have priority over the Drake. I think this will be a difficult contest for TSM.
Levi taking this Drake down pretty rapidly. Equalizer going to be cast to just try to zone them away if at all possible. The Smite Secure comes in. The Marines have got themselves their second Drake of the game.
No plan.
Stark's going to be holding the line against multiple TSM, and some poor coordination almost messes that up. But now they're able to turn it into 2, and the Marines are 14-8.
A very nearly bad setup from Stark, but it ends up going in the Gigabyte Marines' favor. They're now knocking on the door of this Tier 1 tower, and they currently have a 3,000 gold advantage over TSM.
And why not make it even more, Vedius? These guys are not stopping yet. Continuing to push up onto that Tier 2, and it goes back to what you said earlier. Remember, with Ziggs on the team, every turret essentially has 30% less health, or more, depending on how quickly he maxes the ability.
And this is Wild Turtle again. We criticized him earlier on. He feels safer moving into the river given that Haunter is there, but he has no flash. He doesn't respect the positioning of Stark, and this then makes it awkward for Haunter. He's just doing his best to keep his AD carry alive. Once again, the AD carry on TSM just being punished for his poor position.
1, 3, and 2 so far on this Ashe, not having the best of days in terms of the scoreline. Behind his lane opponent in terms of farm as well. Lichbane being worked on by Slay to make him that much more effective at taking down those turrets. We've all seen the silly YouTube clips of a Ziggs throwing a Lichbane auto attack into its satchel and just destroying a turret instantly. And sadly for TSM, that may be the reality that they're eventually faced with if the Marines are allowed to keep making the plays they want to make and playing this game their way.
The big thing for TSM still in this game is Bjergsen, the consistent factor about this lineup. He is a guy that will always perform, and look, he already has a level advantage over Optimus. He's still 2-1-1. He has healthy farm, and he's in a decent position. So there's still the ability for TSM to be able to play this 1-3-1. It's just about being able to move around the map more efficiently than that of the Gigabyte Marines, and now they should be able to easily take this tower down in the top lane. The question is, how can the Gigabyte Marines respond?
Stark uses the ulti, just trying to buy some time, but unfortunately for him, it's not going to do a lot just yet. However, it will do enough to buy Slay the opportunity to take down that Tier 2 in the mid lane. That's a 4 turret count now for the Marines. as they have put a dent in that Tier 2 line.
One of the big question marks that we had when we were discussing coming into this game is when you see these play-in teams, initially you think, how great is their understanding of macro? How well do they know how to punish these positional mistakes from their opponents? And one of the big praises that we gave to Supermassive was they seemed like the best team at understanding how to move around the map and how to take advantage rather than from snowballing kills, but more from just poor positioning and good vision control. Now what we see from the Gigabyte Marines is their ability to constantly punish it, and I think they're looking to do exactly the same down in the bottom lane.
Monster being collapsed on by 2. Got to try to work his way out of this one if at all possible, but Levi's there with the damage, Stark's there with the CC, and the top laner from the Marines will go to 5-0-2.
And this is exactly what we were just talking about. Look at the setup from TSM. The rest of Haunts' teammates were back in base. He was overextended in the bottom lane without any vision. Levi saw that as an opportunity, immediately rotates down, and they get themselves a kill. Now TSM, all they've tried to do is quickly get themselves some vision around Baron, because that is likely going to be one of the big objectives that Gigabyte Marines will have their eyes on. But instead, the Marines are saying, we want to put pressure down on this tier 2 in the bottom lane.
They put a couple of hits on it, but Bjergsen is there in time to make sure that it's not any serious damage. Meanwhile, Slay continues the pressure here in the mid lane, and the Gigabyte Marine game plan has pretty much gone according to plan so far. I mean, TSM, we had questions on how well is this going to work now that you're going up against a higher caliber of team. Are the Gigabyte Marines really this adept at these early aggressive plays and playing around these spikes, or are they just playing against teams that don't have the tools to retaliate against it and answer it properly? And right now, it's seeming like, yeah, they're just really, really good at this plan.
They certainly are, but they still have to close out the game, and that is the big difficulty. Remember that TSM, they have been in this position before. The Gigabyte Marines were consistently dominant within their own region. They were dominant during the group stages of Group B. And now they're going to be able to, now they have to try and close out this game. This is still a best of 5 series. They still need to take it all the way. And while this is a great start, remember that it came off the back of punishing Svenskeren for trying to make that invade. It came off the back of TSM not being able to properly execute on their level 1 plan. And the Gigabyte Marines took advantage of that. So we'll now have to see what they can continue to do. Their main objective is going to be around this Baron area. They're keeping Stark down the bottom half of the map. He has his teleport up and available. And a lot of the Gigabyte Marines have hit a lot of these 2-item spikes. The issue that they have is with Ziggs, he doesn't have the fastest Baron taking potential, right? So let's see where the Gigabyte Marines look to try and move now.
TSM keeping 3 bodies around the mid lane. Levi and Optimus trying to clear out that control ward, but Optimus gets hit and he is going to be exploded. Wild Turtle taking the kill credit for that one, and TSM might have found their chance to maybe make some more happen here. Bjergsen popping the ghost blades, Svenskeren wanting to get in there, find even more damage if he can. Levi going to be kiting backwards, utilizing the triple rockets, but Archie has been left for dead. Bjergsen goes forward, and with a tumble through the air, Svenskeren is going to be the one who takes the kill credit for it. Now TSM moving on potentially towards greater things. Baron Nashor is going to clear a ward away from that one, continue to push up now down mid lane. It's a 5 versus 3.
Svenskeren has already lost 2 swipe fights this game. He doesn't want to make it a third. They're going to go for the easy objective of mid lane. It is the safer, smarter play, but great response from the side of TSM. They realized that only Optimus and Levi, the 2-man unit, were trying to clear out that vision. Even though 3 members of TSM were all sitting on that ward, the Gigabyte Marines did not respect the possibility of that engage coming out from them. Now look, they're actually just going to go straight for the Baron as TSM. They're in the bottom half of the map.
This is incredibly brave from Gigabyte Marines. They are just starting Baron up. Redemption's going to be used to keep them healthy. Baron's down to about 1/3 HP. Haunts are going to fire the equalizer. Biofrost taken low. They're trying to stay on top of Baron if they can. And Gigabyte Marines have taken Baron Nashor. Haunts are now working his way into the pit, able to find 1, not going to be finding 2. 3 dead on TSM. They find a triple kill onto the enemy jungler, and Gigabyte Marines now have control over everything. Turtle's able to rotate top, grab the kill onto Slay. But it's a 3 versus 1 for the next 20 seconds.
But this is a decision-making from the Gigabyte Marines. This is what they were known for on the day 1 of Group B. These guys just see an opportunity and they rush it. They saw TSM moving down to the Mountain Drake. They saw an opportunity, and my word, there was so much risk against the Rumble in the Baron pit with Bjergsen and Svenskeren just coming up through the river. so many things could have gone wrong, but they didn't care. They make it work, and they get themselves an inhibitor. Just look at this play from Optimus. Great flash from him to avoid the damage from Bjergsen and Biofrost. But then you've got 3 members sitting in the pit against Rumble Ultimate, but the rest of TSM, they cannot follow up. So TSM, he's left by himself, and sure, he's able to get himself a kill, but the Baron is the core objective that goes in the favor of Gigabyte Marines. And I'm just so impressed with how these guys are playing this game.
And TSM, that Baron call from Gigabyte also stopped them from getting the Mountain Drake, because TSM had to bail out and say, wait, we got more important stuff to deal with. So now the 3rd Elemental Drake of the game will go the way of the Marines. Monster a little bit too close for comfort here. Stark taking a swig and walking up, but doesn't want to go too far onto that one. Marines now have a 7,000 gold lead, just 25 minutes into this game. Vedius 5 turrets to 3, 3 Drakes to 0. This game has been in their control from the start. The one time we see TSM make that good play, find the catch onto Optimus, make more out of it, the immediate response is there. Now they've got to defend against the further Baron push. And they're gonna do it in spectacular style. 2 dead on the side of the Marines, and TSM is quickly looking to respond to this Baron push and stop it in its tracks.
So TSM, they're saying, you know what, we can punish mistakes too. You funnel into that choke point, we're gonna throw down our equalizer with the Strangle Thorns, and there is nothing that you're gonna be able to do about it. Really good response from TSM. They'll be able to buy time now during the Baron, and they very well could not lose anything off the back of it. And this is the kind of play that we see a lot from TSM. When their backs are against the wall, they're not a team that will just calmly bleed out. They're not a team that will just concede all of their objectives. They will position themselves in a small gap where they know you have no vision, and they will lie in wait. And the moment they see you overstep, the moment they see a slight opportunity, they will punish it. They did this so well in Game 3 against Cloud9, and that's how they asserted themselves back into the game, and now they're trying to do it against the Gigabyte Marines.
And this is that zone control we were talking about from their composition as well, with Stranglethorns and Equalizers and Smoke Screens. You can't get near the red or you're going to have a real bad time, and the Gigabyte Marines learned that one the hard way. They've still got themselves an advantage. The game is still under their control. They've still got that mid-lane inhibitor down, but they've really got to respect what could happen if they underestimate TSM again and walk into one of those choke points, one of those small corridors you mentioned, because that's where TSM's composition shines.
And this is fine for TSM because they've been able to stall out the entire duration of Baron. They did end up losing their mid-inhibitor, but they've lost nothing else off the back of it too. Now with the Ziggs, it should be pretty easy for Gigabyte to just group up top and start sieging onto this tower, but there's always that possibility of the flank, and just look at the vision from TSM in their half of the jungle. They're the ones that are fully in control, so if the Gigabyte Marines try to set up this siege, the flanking opportunities from TSM are just lying in wait.
Stark takes a drink, Zone's been scaring away. Biofrost going to be eating a lot of burst from Optimus, but now returns some of his own. Still going to be kept alive, just ever so barely. More damage coming out. Levi looking to chase him down if he can. Collateral damage, not going to be finding much of anything. But Levi finds Bio, and that makes this a 5v4 for the next 30 seconds.
But Stark is taking a lot of damage. The front line for the Gigabyte Marines is very low. The big thing for TSM is they've lost their disengage tool in Zyra. Gigabyte Marines, they feel confident enough to siege onto this tower, but I feel like it would be safe for them to disengage. They're going in.
Oh, Haunter forced to flash out to keep himself alive. Mega Inferno Bomb comes in, but not going to be finding a whole lot of payoff from that one. Marines still thinking about hanging around for this one, but you've got to watch out. You've got to be careful with Optimus's health bar.
This is very risky for the Gigabyte Marines. They are pretty low, and they're trying to siege onto a tower with no minions.
They have no minions, so
yeah,
they're
just back off, Gigabyte.
Okay.
Just back off. Let's go home. You've gotten yourself a tower. You can be happy with that. Get yourself control now towards the bottom half of TSM's jungle. You want to look towards getting that mid-inhib along with that tier 2 tower in the bottom lane. It's only 29 minutes into the game, Captain Flowers. But the Gigabyte Marines, they're all about trying to push this lead as quickly as they can.
And you know, we were talking about Gigabyte Marines as this team. Oh yeah, look at jungle, look at mid. Every single time, it's Levi and it's Optimus. But this game, you've got Levi going off on the Kha'Zix. You have him 8-1-4 doing a phenomenal job. But look at Stark with 5-0-3 on the top lane Gragas. He's been doing a lot of work on this team.
He's been having a great performance. Within his own region, he is known for playing more bruisers, the get-in-your-face style. He likes to Renekton, he likes to Rumble, he loves the Kennen. We saw the very first ban coming out from TSM was that Kennen, largely away from Stark. And this is a guy that is now moving on to the tanks, and there was a bit of fear. how well can he perform on these tanks? How well can he be that frontline individual? And so far this game, he has been doing a great job not only in lane, but in a lot of these big mid-game fights as well.
Well, the Gigabyte push machine is back in full swing, trying to take down the remaining tier 2 on the map. Mid lane Inhib has respawned. Levi going to be stunned up with the Enchanted Crystalero, but look at that damage! Haunts are going to be going golden, trying to stay zoned, see what he can do. Stark going to be in the front line, soaking damage from 3 members, still staying alive somehow. Redemption will keep them alive. Turtle's going to be taken low, somehow still going. Bjergsen's Shock Blast will take 3 low, but won't find any. And the Gigabyte Marines walk away alive.
Look at all the blinking health bars from the Gigabyte Marines. They were so close for that fight ending in disaster, but they get themselves the tower, they get themselves the kills. And this whole fight initiation comes from Wild Turtle. They lock down onto Levi. You think the setup is promising, but a beautiful stun from Optimus completely negates the follow-up engagement from Team Solo Mid. And at this point, it's just them sitting in the Redemption, playing the fight safe and slow. And with that, oh, it was so close. The route into the Shock Blast could have just ended in disaster for Gigabyte Marines, but they walk away with all 5 members still alive.
That was way too close for comfort. They got to be wiping the sweat off their foreheads from that one, but the main thing that matters is they did get what they came for. They got that tier 2 turret, but they do not have free pressure going into the enemy base based off of that mid lane Inhib anymore. And Baron is now live for the 2nd time this game. Gigabyte Marines with a very decisive call, took it the first time. Now TSM trying to get vision control to make sure that doesn't happen again. Bjergsen, if he gets caught, that is just disaster for the North American LCS representatives, and that's the truth they're dealing with. Cask beautifully knocks Biofrost and Turtle right back into their waiting arms. Levi's gonna be resetting, and Turtle's gonna be forgetting what it feels like to be alive for the next 45 seconds as Gigabyte Marines have their chance.
They have the Ziggs, they have 5 members, Captain Flowers. I think the Gigabyte Marines are well on their way to trying to end out this game.
Running it down mid right now, just trying to get that push going. The minion wave is coming up, the inhibitor's gonna be going down. Haunts are trying to escape from Levi, who will prevent him from backing and defending. And might as well just win the 1v1 in the meantime. This is Gigabyte Marines closing in on Nexus turrets. Svenskeren will not make this defense. And against all odds and to the surprise of you, me, and almost everyone predicting this game, Gigabyte Marines will go up to a 1-0 lead.
Woo! What a game, Captain Flowers.
If you want to make a statement as a team looking to prove yourself at the MSI 2017 play-ins, you take down TSM in game number 1 of your best of 5 series. Gigabyte Marines came to play.
And they did it in such a way that was so enjoyable to watch. They gave Haunsa his rumble. He didn't get that once in the North American finals. Cloud9 showed so much respect to it that they said, we have to take it off your hands. And these guys say, you know what, we're going to lock in an early Gragas and we're going to challenge your rumble. Not only that, Levi, 2 of his best junglers get taken off him. And then we even see the Jace come out. So there are like few direct counters to give Optimus the advantage. And still, these guys, they play to their style. They get that 1 early kill, and they just keep the pressure going. The Gigabyte Marines, they are showing their stuff in this best of 5.
And TSM so confident at that level 1, moving into enemy territory, saying, look, we know that these guys like to get aggressive early. We know that jungler's important. Let's just shut him down. And then it goes the other way. And Gigabyte's like, okay, you want to see our game plan? We're going to show it to you. But for more on the Gigabyte Marines win, let's check in with the analyst desk.
Thank you very much, Captain Flowers. It's good that you bring up that level 1, because things got pretty bad for TSM right off the bat, which I think we can safely say we did not expect.
No, absolutely didn't expect that. You can't underestimate the Gigabyte Marines. I think that's fair to say. I'm pretty sure, based off the draft alone, TSM disrespected them just a little bit, not drafting a tank, but it is mostly that level 1. That's the thing. You don't fight a Vietnamese jungler for Raptors. I can tell you this because I cast SOFM in the LPL. Every time you look at his Raptors, it personally affects the man. He will fight you for them, and giving him like the opportunity to actually secure 5 of these, smite it, get level 2, of course you're going to lose this. It's risky.
And I think that's the weird thing. It's like TSM stick around for so long after just getting the small ones. I know they want to commit to actually getting everything from this, but first of all, they give over the first blood, and from there, they never really play with respect. Of course, Haunter has to try and stop something here. There's kind of a bit of a fortunate thing that Levi doesn't have his flash available, otherwise this would have been a double kill. And then instead of going into damage control mode, all of their members start stepping forward in these aggressive positions like Wild Turtle, completely disrespecting Slay. Like, I don't know why he's not expecting the satchel charge to come out.
And they were in
there.
complete control of the lane in that early game, right? But it just feels like you didn't need to step forward, you don't need to take those risks, and it feels like a lot of the time TSM going for aggressive plays. Now, admittedly, in this last replay, Bjergsen does come in clutch, does make it a 1-for-1, but there's so many situations where you wonder, did TSM have to take those fights?
Because on that one, like, they'd just seen the vision control be denied. They knew exactly where the Kha'Zix, the Syndra, were going into the jungle, and yet you cross through mid. It's a great setup from the Gigabyte Marines. I don't want to take anything away from that. Knowing they can get a pick, successfully capitalizing it, puts them in such a strong position.
Well, of course, the question always is with teams like this, if they get an early lead, can they capitalize? Can they snowball? And for Gigabyte Marines, the resounding answer was yes. As we take a chance to look at our second replay, you can see after just a chain series of team fights, they finally start making these larger macro plays.
And this is all a very good decision from the Gigabyte Marines, specifically saying that we can dive, acknowledging that Rumble Equalizer is off cooldown, that they've swapped lanes, that they're putting a full team effort towards going towards this top lane turret. They've proven that if you give them an advantage, they play hard and fast League of Legends. And this is the example of when they are just far enough ahead and TSMs continue to disrespect them just enough that a dive is entirely possible and they actually catch two people under there instead of having them back away.
Yeah, and by a split second, not getting the first Tower Blood for the Gigabyte Marines. But I think one of the key things that the level 1 influence is it felt like TSM were playing this as if it was an even game for the majority. The fact that Bjergsen pushes up mid twice when fights are happening, thinking the rest of his team can handle it, which is okay if the game is even right there, but then doesn't have the damage to come down to the fight. Now, that's not necessarily his fault, but it's the way that TSM are playing as a team around of team fights and skirmishes.
Yeah, I just wonder if they were even expecting these fights to happen all of the time, right? Playing in their own league, a little bit more slow, refined League of Legends, whereas this is just all in. Hard to the paint, League of Legends. We'll take you down. We'll fight you at every possible
Well, and they have to be ready for it, because I feel like TSM is so often the team that is always willing to fight, that is always willing to take the fight to the enemy team when they're behind. Now, this enemy team, they're ahead. They say, sure, you want a 4v4, you want a 5v5, we'll take it every chance we get. And for the vast majority of the fights this game, it did feel like Gigabyte was, outplaying in a lot of those situations.
Absolutely, and that's why we've got to give them so much credit. It's not only just the fights, it's the way they move on the map, because we want to take a look at their Baron call. This is something that they had done time after time in the group stage initially a few days ago, where they just go, hey, everybody recalled on bot side from TSM. Let's go straight to the Baron. Let's rush it down. It's not the clean setup of Baron that you want textbook and deal with everything, but still, this Baron call is what is making the Gigabyte Marines so difficult to play against.
Let's take a look at that Baron call now, looking at exactly the way this unfolded. As you said, it's risky. They just saw TSM back. They go all in for this, but they do make it work here.
And it's won them play in games, exactly as you mentioned. The ability to just say go for it. The Gigabyte Marines as a team make the best decisions and look the best when they're forcing you into awkward spots, because they are just so aggressively making these calls. No one in their right mind just says, go for Baron this early into the game with 3 people only, with 2 people not going to be around for the fight. But because TSM don't expect it, it always does seem to work out for them. That's a strength that needs to be 100% respected moving forward.
And you can see the gold graph. Almost always what we like to see when a team is going to snowball to a win. A little bit contented there in the early game, but the pretty consistent snowball, especially once that Baron comes online. Now, looking at the way this unfolded, we talked about the lack of a tank on the TSM composition. Is it that simple for them coming into the next game? Do they just need to draft a tank?
I think what TSM need to do is actually hit the drawing board, less so in the draft. Yes, the tank could have helped them perhaps from a losing position. The Jace in the mid lane as well could very easily have been a Talia, a Syndra themselves, or an Orianna, or some kind of control mage. They didn't need physical damage there as they had the Graves. So the draft, yes, could be looked at, but for me, fundamentally looking at TSM in game number 1, they need to do things more as a team, like actually work together. We rarely saw Bjergsen actually with them during these skirmishes and fights.
Well, and how much of that, because we talked about that over the course of the game, just watching these games, Bjergsen never seems to be there, always seems to be pushing in the lane. How much of that is Bjergsen not being where he's supposed to be, and how much of that is Gigabyte Marines forcing these rapid plays, forcing TSM kind of onto the back foot?
As you said, we were talking about it during the game, it's somewhat of a part of both, right? Is that Gigabyte Marines are going towards Bjergsen and saying, hey, or going away from him, sorry, and saying, hey, he can't actually match this kind of positioning from us. And that was the point that you were saying, Rusty, was like, hey, there's 2 sides to this story, and it's both things weigh up to be pretty detrimental for teamfight and skirmishes for TSM.
At the end of the day, gentlemen, one final question. TSM, how do we feel like they're going to be able to adapt in the next game?
I think they just start with the draft phase, give themselves a traditional tank, put Haunter on something comfortable, and actually have Svenskeren farm his own side of the jungle.
I think whether it's looking towards slightly different setup, but I think it's the respect that they got to give towards Levi now. I think they'll have learned they need to actually start thinking more consciously about, hey, if Levi could be in that bush, if he could be trying to set up a gank here, we don't want to go around that area. I wonder whether seeing something like an Ivern might allow them to slow the pace of the game and take away from Levi if they can get him off one of the aggressive junglers.
Well, we'll see how that works. Talk about that more when we return. But in the meantime, we're going to head to a quick break. There's more League of Legends coming right up when we return to see if TSM can bounce back in Game 2 or if the Gigabyte Marines can jump out to a 2-game lead.
Very early, trying to steal away one of those camps, but don't exactly get away with it. Now they're going to be turning the aggro right back onto him. Svenskera trying to flash away, but first blood! Stark makes his way into the fight. Haunster, too, who grabs the kill onto the enemy bot laner. A double kill for Optimus. Now Haunster going to be taken down. The fat man gives him the belly slop. And Gigabyte Marines have taken Baron Nashor. Haunster now working his way into the pit, able to find one. Not going to be finding two. 3 dead on TSM. They find a triple kill. Beautifully knocks Biofrost and Turtle right back into their waiting arms. Levi's gonna be resetting, and Turtle's gonna be forgetting what it feels like to be alive. For the Gigabyte Marines will go up to a 1-0 lead.
then the Gigabyte Marines were just so good at punishing every time TSM tried to make something happen.
And speaking of leads, Levi got that early one with the first blood from the invade coming out from TSM, and just what a superstar jungle performance he had after that. Just his Kha'Zix constantly going around making plays with the team, finding the kills, finding the setups. TSM has got to find a way to shut this guy down.
We remember Rusty saying that this is the best jungler in the play-ins when he's alive.
Yes.
And when you have a scoreline of like 9, 1, and 8, like, you're alive for a long time.
Yeah, you're not spending a lot of time dead if you've only managed to chalk up 1 the whole game, but that aggressive style, of course, sometimes lends you towards a couple of deaths as you have to go in and go very deep, but when your team's ahead the whole time, when you're always able to set those things up, man, he just got away with it time and time again. Did a great job for his team, really put the Marines where they needed to be the whole time, and everybody played their role, right? Optimus was finding the burst. He played well. We talked about Stark's performance, 5-0-2 when Hanser was, I believe, 2-5-0. So
yeah,
just contributing
like
a lot more to things. And then even in the bottom lane, you mentioned Wild Turtle's positioning, and we talked about how neither one of these two teams right now is really playing a focus on the bot lane. Everything's about our AD carry type of style, but the representative from the GPL, the Gigabyte Marines, they're used to saying, okay, you guys, you got the good game knowledge, you know how to be helpful, you know how to just sort of allow the rest of the game to flow and still be useful later. While Wild Turtle is trying to make these plays, and it didn't work out.
Yeah, it was certainly rough for the bottom lane of Team Solar Mid. But I feel like this is also a situation that they've been in a number of times. They do have this tendency to lose the first game in a best-of-5 series, and I'm confident that they will be able to bounce back. And now that they are on red side, I'm interested to see how they change up their draft. I wouldn't be surprised if we actually saw an early rotation of something like the Syndra, and then we actually see a lot of bans directed towards Optimus to try and guarantee that Bjergsen can get a more prevalent power pick in the middle lane.
Bjergsen was the one person on TSM who, like you mentioned during the game, in game number 1, was still stepping up, was still making plays. We saw the flash over the Syndra push to make sure that he got the extra kill into Optimus in one of the bottom lane team fights, and this is the guy that TSM is going to be looking at to do their heavy lifting. Heading into Champion Select for the second time today, though. We're going to see the band start off with Lulu and Ken, and TSM again showing respect towards that pick.
So it seems that the Gigabyte Marines are not changing anything up as of right now. Now that they've moved over to the blue side, they do have priority pick. They can get themselves an early powerful jungler should they want to, in the forms of Lee Sin or Elise rather, Levi, two of his strongest junglers. They too could also go for the Graves. This is a jungler that Levi is still very confident on, and he can still look to play that aggressive style, but TSM is saying, you know what, Levi? No.
Nope.
None of that today.
Graves is going to be taken off the board. TSM did not find success with it in game number 1. They don't want Levi finding success with it in game number 2, so you might as well just remove it from the picking pool. Shen taken out of the picture by the Gigabyte Marines so that they don't have that save potential to ruin their plans for those snowbally early plays. And Ivern will be their last ban.
So bear in mind that Gigabyte Marines are now guaranteed to either get themselves Elise or Lee Sin, two of Levi's strongest junglers, and I would not be surprised if they look to first rotate it. It is something that they have commonly done, and I feel like that it would make a lot of sense, especially with champions like Lulu and Ivern being taken off the board.
One ban left for TSM, and it will be the Rumble, preventing that one from going over to Stark. Now, do they go for the jungler? Do they go for that playmaker? Go ahead and just get Levi right where they need him, because both of those champions are up. They're only ever played as junglers, so even if TSM takes one, Levi could always take the other.
And bear in mind, Sven Skaren, a lot of discussion has been around what is his strongest jungler, and people would argue that it is, in fact, that Lee Sin. So TSM, they could look to rotate something like their AD carry, given that the support has already been locked in, and then get themselves a Lee Sin followed up with that, which is a very common draft, which they have done multiple times, especially during the finals against Cloud.
And there you go, almost as if he knew what was going to happen ahead of time. Vedius with the predictions, the Ashe and the Sin both locked in for TSM.
So now, if you're the Gigabyte Marines, what you would expect is something like an Elise to come out from Levi. You have to pick it on this rotation, right? You can't afford to have it banned away, unless he feels confident enough that even with Elise and a Kha'Zix ban, he still has something left in the tank to bring out against Team Solar Mid.
Ooh, they lock in the Gragas for the second time. It did wonders for him in game number 1, so they're pretty confident in putting Stark back on that one here in game number 2.
And there's no reason why not to, right? Like, he had a great performance in Game 1. It's a very safe, solid top laner. Nautilus had a few nerfs on recent patches, so it Gragas has now risen in priority, right? So I think that it's a perfectly fine, and I think that so far you've already got a pretty safe draft from the side of Gigabyte Marines.
Yep, can't argue with success, and might as well just go ahead and sing the same song again, as they are going to be putting Levi back on the Kha'Zix from game number 1, even with Elise still available.
Now, I wonder whether or not TSM go for the Syndra here. Guarantee Bjergsen is on a powerful mid lane champion, and then they can look to ban away champions like the Fizz, like the Echo, force Optimus onto something like an Ahri. Instead, no, they're just going to play it safe. They are just going to go for a little bit more of a meta standard comp where they just guarantee that tanky top laner.
Well, tanky AP top lane versus tanky AP top lane. 2 big damage junglers. But the difference here in the first half of the draft is we've got the support and the AD carry picked on opposite sides, so bans might differ up a little bit. TSM going to start things off in the second banning phase by removing LeBlanc from the pool. Again, throwing some targeted attention towards Optimus.
Now, Gigabyte Marines, they too can look to ban away some of the supports like they did in game before. Thresh and Nami seem to be the go-tos. We know that Bifrost did play a lot of Thresh during the regular season, and its playmaking potential against champions like Karma are also very good. I wonder whether or not Gigabyte Marines just go for exactly the same composition that they went for before. I mean, the Ziggs was perfectly fine during the laning phase. Sure, he struggled early on, but he was getting to a point where he was just going to become that pushing bot anyway, right? And a lot of those fights, he did a lot of work. So I wonder whether or not they will just stick to what they've already had work for them in game 1.
TSM decide to take Fizz out of the picture as their second and final ban of this second banning phase and overall draft. One more to go for the Gigabyte Marines. Will it be the Nami again? Do they want to keep focusing on the support role, or do they maybe want to throw one the way of Bjergsen? Looks like the choice is going to be the Nami yet again, just targeting what Biofrost can do there in the bottom lane. They know that last time things worked out pretty well for themselves. Turtle was not able to contribute in a meaningful way to TSM's game plan. He did have a couple really nice arrows, so that's one thing that TSM can always sort of bank on, is him being able to try to hit those and set things up. And considering they're going to have Bjergsen on the Syndra this game, that would explain the Fizz ban. That would explain why they wanted to set things up like that, so Bjergsen can play that and be that big damage threat.
Now, if the Gigabyte Marines had been the ones to lock in the Syndra, I would have expected something like a Vladimir to come out from Team Solomid, but I feel like that isn't necessarily an Optimus' champion pool. However, we know that as an individual, this guy has a pretty deep champion pool, and he's not afraid to bring out some new and fun picks like he has brought out the Fizz the last time into the Syndra matchup. That is large-wise banned away. I wonder if he is going to edge towards the Echo, which we've commonly seen, or whether or not he'll go more towards an Ahri, but he may even go to something like an AD within his own region. He has played a lot of Zed and Talon to a large amount of success.
I gave you credit for the prediction earlier, but the predict Zed locked in for Optimus up against Bjergsen Syndra. That's going to be a fun matchup to watch. I don't care who you are. Zed versus Syndra, you get to watch the outplay potential. This is going to be really cool.
Now, during the early laning phase, it is very rough for Zed.
Right.
However, once he hits the level 6 mark, the outplay potential becomes huge. You have to be very careful, because ideally you want to use your ultimate to dodge the ulti of Syndra. I mean, that is her highest damage dealing ability, but you can also use your shadows to be able to dodge a lot of her CCs and stuns, and with your natural mobility, you can dart and dance around a lot of her primary skill shots. And with her low mobility, she's also going to struggle to self-heal against Zed in these later fights. But yet, remember that items like Zhonya's do make your life a living hell as an assassin.
A little bit difficult to get your damage done through that golden statue phase, but Biofrost will pick up that Braum for himself, the last pick on the side of TSM to go into this second game. And one thing I'm not expecting to see in this one, Vedius, is a level 1 attempt at the chicken game.
Yeah, I think that TSM will go a little bit more standard this time around. Now, the bottom lane of TSM, they don't have the same sort of pushing or threat that they had in the game before, but I think that the Braum makes more sense in terms of the overall composition. What Braum is really good at is his ability to disengage and his ability to peel. So when you have 2 low mobility carries, having this Braum is going to make Zed's life even harder when he wants to try and get onto the backline. You also have a Nautilus and a Lee Sin sitting on the front, So every time he tries to go in, he's just going to get knocked right back out again.
And it makes Kha'Zix's life that much harder too,
Exactly.
right? It's going to try to prevent Levi from becoming that monster that he was in game number 1, not allowing him to be that effective as the fights go on, reducing how well he can use those tools built into that assassin kit.
So the standard hashtags, I feel like the Gigabyte Marines may very well get a few more after that game one
They had to have
performance.
won themselves some fans with that game 1 performance, managing to take down a heavily favored opponent, one of the biggest League of Legends dynasties out there, and the Gigabyte Marines said, you know what? We don't care.
Yeah, and that's what I love about them. The fact that they didn't play scared. They didn't show TSM a large amount of respect. They took a lead and they went with it.
Yeah, they played against TSM the same way they were playing against the other teams in their group during the first week of the play-in stage. They just treated them like anybody else. You turn the nameplates off, and you're not up against Bjergsen, you're up against a Syndra. Just do the same thing you would do against any other Syndra. And now TSM invading through the bottom tri-brush. Not really gonna find a whole lot of success there. Instead, get 2 hits on a ward and eat some bombs for their trouble.
And the instant response from Levi too, gonna move in, get the deep vision around the Raptors so they can spot out where Svenskaren's looking to start his early jungle pathing. You would expect him to start in the top half of the map, given that early on, if you want to try and gank anywhere, it would very much be towards either the Syndra or down the bottom lane. But I feel like in terms of early ganking, we shouldn't see very much action. I feel like that for TSM, excuse me, they just need to play things cool, calm.
Slow and steady.
Yeah, they have a great scaling composition around the mid game. When they get the 2-item spike is really where their composition turns on. They can utilize the fact that they have a Syndra and Lee Sin as a roaming death squad because they're guaranteed to have push in the middle lane. We just don't want to see any aggressive, violent forces from the side of TSM because that is what cost them in game 1, and the Gigabyte Marines were very good at punishing those small mistakes.
Optimus just enjoying some of that level 1 Syndra action where the ranged auto attacks and the orbs together make your life pretty difficult.
Yeah, it really is it's a tough matchup early on for the Zed. Level 2, he's likely going to get his Shadow for a bit of extra range harass, but it's also his safety tool, right? So if an early gank does come in his way, he will have another means of being able to escape. Oh, we actually see interesting pathing from Levi heading towards the bottom half of the map.
I was going to say, speaking of early gank potential, Levi now moving into enemy territory, thinking about stealing away Svenskaren's blue, but Sven heading towards that now, might just discover him.
Levi still has his ward. Oh, he's just lying in wait. He's for the cheese.
Svenskaren, though, going to spend some time at Wolves. So Levi says, all right, I don't care. I'm just going to start this up.
But this is really bad for Levi because now Svenskaren is going to be in a much better position. He's also level 3. Well, will he be able to clear it fast enough?
Levi needs to put in a little more work under this blue buff. Sven's going to be there in just a moment. Levi barely getting that one out.
He's looking for a
He's
trade
dancing
too.
around. He wants
He's
to
going
fight
in.
this. He doesn't care. Svenskaren now going back in with Resonating Strike. These two are going to be fighting to the death. Svenskaren taken low, barely getting himself away. The red buff is taken. And first blood to the Gigabyte Marines jungler. 2 games in a row, Vedius. But TSM responds in force.
This time Bjergsen says, no, well, this is not happening again.
I will shut that down right now.
No, stop it, stop it. He gets himself the double buff. He gets himself the kill. And while they do lose first blood, the Gigabyte Marines, they just invested a little bit too much. The fact that Optimus could not collapse faster than Bjergsen is going to be massive for the mid lane matchup. But here we see Levi at this point, I feel should just disengage. He should just leave. He got the blue buff. He's happy. Both junglers choose to fight because Svenskaren knows the Bifrost is coming in, and with the exhaust, he's going to be able to win that matchup. But Levi feels confident because he has Archie and Slay following up from behind. The big turning point is the fact that Turtle's able to get there faster, but in particular, Bjergsen flashes over the wall with the level 3 as well. But now he has no flash.
Bjergsen has double buffs, though, but not for long. Levi comes back in, and Optimus is going to be given the kill. TSM's mid laner falls. Now Archie trying to get himself
Ben, you
away
have
from
the flash.
Svenskaren's counterattack. Jumping back over the wall with the safeguard. He had Biofrost waiting just so he had that escape route.
Buff transfer complete.
Complete. That was the entire plan.
It was all part of the plan.
It was all to get Optimus going. We talked about these two being how they win games. Well, Give that Zed a double buff, and that's how you're going to find yourself winning a game a lot of the time.
But I love the fact that Levi comes back mid to punish the no-flash Bjergsen. I don't know how many times I've seen in the LCS, or in the European LCS in particular, where like a jungle will come mid early on, burn the flash, never come back again. He'll
like, well,
never look
I
to
did my
punish it.
job.
Yeah, he's just like, now the enemy mid laner has to play safe. But this time around, Bjergsen, he has the double buff, he knows he's pushing in mid, and then Levi, he just doesn't even clear any of his camps, he just makes the map moving around. And he's able to get the collapse down, and then Optimus, he just picks himself up the last hit. So now he will be able to get himself level 6 first. He has double buffs for himself. He has Ignite as well against a no-flash Syndra. So I would not be surprised to see a return gank coming out from Levy the moment that level 6 comes around.
Many plays to be made, and like we said about these guys, you know they're always going to be tracking those leveling spikes. Levi in some real trouble, though, going to be caught out and punished as Bjergsen grabs himself a kill. 3-2 now for TSM, 2-1 on Bjergsen. He's got 100% kill participation thus far. Now he's got himself a blue buff too.
And now we're seeing a few mistakes from Levi where he's feeling a little bit too overconfident, trying to go for these invades without guaranteed push from both his top and his mid lane. The Star could only just return to lane. Optimus, he was not in a position to continue this push because even though he has a kill and he has a slight experience advantage over Bjergsen, that does not mean he suddenly now wins this match because he's going all in.
Bjergsen going to be jumped on by Optimus, who immediately bails himself away after getting shoved around. Deathmark not going to do nearly enough. Bjergsen doesn't even need to get himself all the way back. Instead, just going to go ahead, eat one of those biscuits and hang around.
Really subtle play there from Bjergsen as well. Note that the conventional path is you know where the Zed is going to land after his ultimate. He's always going to fall behind you, right? Which means that if you're Syndra, you just set up your stun to just hit behind you and land it onto Optimus underneath his turret. So Optimus immediately flashes so that he doesn't get stunned underneath the turret. But Bjergsen, he's patient with his stun, and he's then able to try and land it as Optimus is already underneath his turret, but in a different position. So small outplay.
Tiny changes
just a tiny
you can make
thing
to your game plan to make all the difference at this level of play. That's not exactly where he wanted
Just
to go.
trying to give him a drink.
Yeah.
A little dehydrated there, Haunter.
Take a sip. But neither one of these two really in any supreme danger. A lot of Doran's rings between them, though.
Oh, yeah. Fellowship build coming into fruition right now. We're going to have all the rings of man at this point.
We're going to have something up there. These guys just making sure they're invested into that early game. 48 to 54 CS, both farming around the same rate as well. Biofrost in this bottom side river, laying down some vision, just roaming around a bit. Turtle's just cool hanging out underneath the turret. Keep in mind, Wild Turtle does have that ultimate available. Enchanted Crystal Arrow can be used to set up those plays, but Mega Inferno Bomb also online for Slay. Remember what happened to Wild Turtle in game number 1 when he didn't respect the burst power of the Marines bottom lane.
It's very true. It's very, very true. Now, Bjergsen with Sven is moving towards the top half of the map. Optimus is going to use this as an opportunity to try and push mid, but Starkey doesn't have mana. He does have flash, but no ulti.
This is going to be a very difficult situation to get away from with the 3-man collapse. Haunter needs to get himself away from the turret. He does so, and Svenskeren grabs the kill onto Stark, as now they'll put the pain onto the tier 1.
Clean dive from the side of TSM. They had river control. They knew that it would be too late for Stark to notice before they were able to get themselves the dive. And they should be able to get themselves the first tower of the game. Now, the Gigabyte Marines, they're trying to respond by getting themselves the Infernal Drake.
And they'll do so. But that turret first blood will go the way of TSM. That's a nice chunk of gold going into their pockets, and they're 2K up.
Oh, for sure. I think TSM can be pretty happy with that. They can keep sending Haunter up top, but now he has a little bit more freedom to make more map movements, right? He has his TP coming up fairly soon. But notice how Gigabyte Marines are using this as an opportunity to get deep vision down the bottom half of the map. They want to try and make a play towards this tower, but Haunter's already making his way down there.
Levi trying to jump onto Wild Turtle as Optimus makes his way into the fight. Deathmark is used. Mega Inferno Bomb comes in for the help. And you can see the Shuriken on his head seals his fate. Biofrost is not there in time. And Levi, the blue buff bandit, I'm pretty sure he has stolen every single TSM blue buff this series. Manages to get that one as well as the kill, but Bjerg and Sven are here to try and avenge their fallen comrade. Heal used, flash as well. TSM not able to find anything.
So TSM made the correct decision in trying to respond to the collapse, because if Gigabyte Marines had stayed there trying to take that tower, it would have been a 4 versus 4 that Stark could not have joined. Bjergsen would have had everything available to him, whereas Optimus had just used his flash, or rather he just used his ultimate and he lost his flash earlier on in the play. So Gigabyte Marines forced to disengage, and TSM, they keep their turret alive down on the bottom lane.
Meanwhile, Haunter walks back up topside in just perfect timing to catch that entire wave. Turtle now hanging around mid lane, working on that Blade of the Ruined King. Morello Namicon will be the build for the Ziggs as per usual. Tracker's Knife with Warrior's Enchant done for both of these junglers. Tracker's Knife pretty much the staple of competitive League of Legends play, making sure you can get down more of those wards, keep more of an eye on your opponent. Especially for a team like Gigabyte Marines that likes to make these early plays, likes to get in the enemy's face, especially in their jungle. Wards are so big.
For sure. Now, if you are the Gigabyte Marines, the best case scenario for you is to actually get this bottom tower down as swiftly as you can, because then you can move the Ziggs and the Karma to the mid lane to start dealing with Bjergsen, and you can move Zed off to a side lane. The best scenario for an AD assassin is just to be free farming where there's no real threat, and you can just go as Haunter goes.
Oh, that was very aggro. Now they're going in, looking to make even more happen if they can. Optimus goes down, and Bjergsen goes up to 3-1 and 2. TSM is not going to be waiting around this game. They will turn the Marines' own game plan against them.
The swift collapse coming in from Haunter, using its flash to lock down Optimus, and now they land a stun.
Now Stark, he's in trouble. Svenskeren able to go in, make the kick back. He dies for it. Mega Inferno Bomb comes in. Stark actually hasn't gone down yet. Biofrost in from behind, flashing forward, looking to make the move. Levi's gonna grab a double kill. Bio having to get himself away from that turret. Stark is still alive, Vedius.
But it ends up being a 2-for-2 overall. Svenskeren tries to set up the kick so the rest of his team can get the follow-up, but Stark, he's so tanky at this point in the game.
He's got 3 Dorian's rings and half of a hoodie.
And he's a fat man. This guy just doesn't take damage. It's insane. Bjergsen does a great job, though. He's able to pick himself a number of kills, 4, 1, and 2 right now. And we just see this happened the earlier pick, and I feel like you don't need to go for this kick hit. You end up trapping yourself underneath the turret against Levi, and also Bjergsen gets zoned out by the big ultimate there from Zig. The fact that Levi just goes in by himself, he knows he's gonna die, but he's like, you know what, I'm just gonna try and trade kills as much as I can. I have to get something back for my team. But wow, back and forth TSM, they're not able to get themselves that mid-tier 1, which really would have opened the map up, but now we see this shift. You can see Ziggs being forced to move into the middle lane. Zed, I expect him to be down the bottom half, and they're gonna keep Gragas up top.
Optimus sitting on top of a ward that he's not 100% sure is there, but dropping the sweeper. Now he knows, getting himself away as Sven jumps in. Bio and Turtle will not collapse in time.
They have the range advantage. They're going to start putting some pressure down onto this tower. Speaking of Precious Slay doing exactly the same thing. He needs to be careful. They do have good vision around the river. The possibility of a collapse is always prevalent, especially with Haunter having a TP advantage. Now, what I'd like to see from TSM is try and force a play knowing that Stark cannot join the fray. Notice how far pushed in he is in the top half of the map. They should look to try and get some vision so they can set up a flank around this mid-tier 1. As Sven finally gets himself a smite.
Sven smiting away that big chicken. As the TP comes in, TSM thinking about forcing something here. Haunter completes the teleport. Dredgeline not finding any sort of a mark, but Optimus goes down as he tries to make the play on a Wild Turtle. Svenskeren not going to be taken low, but not going to be taken down. Haunter is a raid boss in the middle of 3 men. Does not matter. They are able to find 1. Levi's going to be caught by the stun on the very edge. Now a little bit more damage to take him out, but the shutdown over for Slay onto Bjerg. 2 dead on TSM, but it's about to be 3 on the side of the Gigabyte Marines. Almost make it 4. Stark and Levi still might be looking to make some magic happen here. Levi's so very low, but Stark wants more, goes right back into the fight. TSM will escape over to Wild Turtle, who this entire time was working on that tier 1 turret, gets another objective for TSM, and they'll go up to an almost 3,000 gold lead after a bloody jungle fight.
So this time TSM, they're in much more control over the game. They're winning far more of these fights. They just overcommit a little bit too often. So what we see is Optimus coming in from the flank. He wants to try and get the kill down onto Wild Turtle. He feels that in this situation, he's able to get it with the heal, the exhaust, and the power of Braum. You're identifying why this pick was being brought out from TSM as an answer. Meanwhile, Haunter, he just 1v3 in the back of this fight. He knows that the rest of his team is looking to get the follow-up. And at this point, I feel TSM just needs to disengage. But Levi coming in with a very swift heal along with the dangerous game passage to give him a bit of additional health means that Gigabyte Marines are able to get a couple of kills. But TSM, they still have majority control. They get the mid-tower, they get the kills that they want, and they also have primary vision around this Mountain Dragon about to spawn.
Mountain Dragon spawning. TSM would love to get a piece of that. They have lost control over every Elemental Drake in the series so far. Svenskeren just going to go ahead and tag that one up with the Sonic Wave, see if anybody's hanging around. And now TSM will start this one up for themselves. Bjergsen 4-2-4. Very scary on this Syndra. Definitely the guy that you got to watch. Explosive Casket and Enchanted Arrow both going to be finding nothing. Turtle in some trouble, going to be taken very low. Optimus evading some trouble with that Death Mark as now he is down, but so is Sven. Gigabyte Marines trying to chase TSM away. Haunter tanking as long as he can. Going to be forced to flash, trying to escape. A nice Glacial Fissure as Gigabyte Marines stay a little bit too close, but Slay grabs the kill onto Biofrost. Levi over the wall, cuts Turtle down, and Bjergsen goes down as 2. TSM, 1 man left alive, and he is at blinking HP. The Marines will take the fight and earn the Drake.
And this time around, TSM, they were playing that fight so well, kiting back through their own jungle, utilizing the narrow choke point to land so much of the damage from Bjergsen, but then again, they just overstay a little bit too long. They do not expect the Gigabyte Marines to just continue with their fight. They stick on to TSM, they continue with the flanking. They realize that Slay has all this range damage that is continuously chipping down TSM, and they're able to win out. So you see the positioning from the Gigabyte Marines, and they're actually coming from all 3 sides. But here, TSM, they move backwards in towards the choke. Look at this great stun. Optimus is taken out of the fight, Archie is taken out of the fight, and Levi and Slay, they can't really get involved. And at this point, TSM, they just have to concede. They need to back away. They cannot stick around. But then you think, oh, actually, things are looking pretty good. They get Stark pretty low. But then here, while Turtle overextends, allows Levi to get the kill. Bjergsen overextends, allow a 3 versus 1, while the rest of TSM are already looking to back away. And this is just another example of TSM overstaying their welcome and thinking that they can win these extended fights.
Levi 6-3-3, another good game for the star jungler of the Gigabyte Marines. We've been telling you guys the entire time, this is the guy to watch. He works well with Optimus, he works well with the rest of the team, just making plays, doing everything. And this is why the guy is just a monster. Haunter dropping the ulti onto Optimus, now looking to lock him down even further. Bjergsen wants the burst, but instead he's going to be bursted very low. Zhonya's Hourglass to keep himself alive. Optimus grabbing the kill with a well-placed Shuriken. TSM loses 1. Now Gigabyte Marines might lose their top laner in this bottom part of the map. Biofrost tanks up the turret long enough to make the play a success, and TSM will continue working on that tier 1. Meanwhile, Slay takes down the tier 1 on the opposite end. This game is just all over the place, Vedius. The Enchanted Crystal Arrow making its way up towards the mid lane, not going to be finding anything. Haunter the target, Archie not going to drop to that turret. And Optimus gets himself kill number 4.
Gigabyte Marines are playing the map so much better than Team Solomid are right now. TSM invest 3 members down in the bottom half of the map trying to get themselves that turret. They don't realize that Slay, he's able to take 2 towers for himself in the top
big,
lane.
Man.
There was no one there to answer him. And the fact that Bjergsen and Haunter die to what is effectively Optimus baiting them in, saying, oh no, I'm overextended, I'm just a little assassin waiting to be hit. But then all of a sudden, Levi jumps over the wall. He gets the lockdown onto Bjergsen. They go for the dive onto the mid tower. And we're just seeing it time and time again. Gigabyte Marines are not afraid. This is a team that when they see a wall, they do not go around it. They do not climb over it. They charge head first, straight through it, and they are demolishing every resistance that TSM is trying to put up against them.
And Levi is the man with the sledgehammer, just taking this down brick by brick. You can see the gold differences that flashed up there on the bottom part of the scoreboard for a moment. Another massive lead over his counterpart in Svenskeren is why Levi is able to do these things. We've seen Svenskeren try to set up plays throughout this game, and a lot of them have gone awry. We haven't seen any of those huge successful kicks that Lee Sin is drafted for.
Now the gold is still even. TSM is still in a reasonable position. The issue that they have is that they're 1 turret down compared to the Gigabyte Marines. So that series of plays from the Gigabyte Marines has actually more equalized the game rather than giving them a significant lead. So now that TSM can recollect themselves, they can reset, and the Gigabyte Marines, they need to be careful not to overextend.
Oh, speaking of overextending, Stark trying to use the cast, but Svenskeren does a good job holding on to the resonating strike. Stark trying to get away, but it's not happening today. Svenskeren gets himself in there, finds kill number 3.
So this time, it is TSM that are able to punish the overextending Stark down in the bottom lane. They have the numbers advantage. They can start putting pressure down onto this tier 2 turret. And Gigabyte Marines, they're forced to not really have any answers. They've invested a lot of vision around the Baron area, which will be spawning soon. But this is a good setup from TSM.
Haunter continuing the push, Svenskeren with him. Of course, neither one of these two pushes exceptionally quickly, but the two of them together should be able to do a decent amount of damage as the Mega Inferno Bomb comes in to clear that wave away. Svenskeren eating a lot of damage from that turret as he makes his way out. That's the problem of losing all of your minion wave at once. But topside, Levi's knocking on the door to the base.
And we've got a TPM from Stark.
They're just trying to stop the backs, prevent anybody from interrupting Levi. Haunter gets himself over the wall. Optimus grabs a kill onto Sven. All right, that happened.
And now I wonder why Sven is even there. I feel like that we're a broken record here, Flowers. How many times have we said, Sven, like, can we calm down a little bit, please? Like, the inconsistent performances of the TSM jungler. Now Levi,
No. Oh, invisibility right out of the brush. Looking to come back. Zhonya's Hourglass to keep himself safe, and Levi is forced to retreat as Turtle comes in at the clutch moment to make sure his mid laner does not die.
But look here in the bottom lane, Optimus, the pressure is on. Bjergsen's now going to be forced back. The Ash Arrow is unavailable for Wild Turtle, and what was a good punish from TSM, they overstayed, they don't get anything off the back of it, and now they're the ones on the back end.
Thinking about making something else happen if they can. That's the Marines game plan all the time. Always look for more. They grab the tier 2 and they get out.
This is just such great play from the Gigabyte Marines. The fact that they have the Ziggs and they've made it work for a second game in a row. The fact that Levi has been consistently performing. Now on the Kha'Zix. Like, originally he was well known for his Lee Sin and Elise, and he's like, yo, I'm going to add a bug to my repertoire. And
yeah.
Right now he is the bug in the behind of TSM as he is doing so much work in so many of these fights.
Wild Turtle, again, this game he's had some solid arrows.
Yep.
His positioning hasn't put him in as much trouble as it did in the last game.
Yep.
And the team's been doing a good job to help him try to peel that Zed off when Optimus jumps in, but he's going to have a lot of work to do to help TSM win as this game goes on. It's still a very close match, only about 1,500 gold separating the teams. Gigabyte Marines thinking about going in for this one. Levi is a miracle worker! Stark now into the fight. Optimus in the back line with him. Redemption going to be coming down. Stark goes low, gets bursted before he can be healed. A rampage, though, for Optimus. Can they make this fight turn into anything else? Slay going to be having a flash away. Optimus over the wall, wants to throw in the shadow. Bjergsen taken so low. The Rockets nearly finishing him off. TSM trying to get themselves out of this one. Haunter, the only one with any sort of a measurable health bar left, jumps back in onto Levi, but now he's isolated and he is down. TSM is going to be chased all the way. Bjergsen falls, Bio falls. Sven is going to be next as Levi continues to chase. He'll cut off the escape route as Optimus closes in.
Gigabyte, stop chasing up for the kill. Go get Baron. Go get an objective.
This is for glory, Vidius. He jumps over the wall and he's not going anywhere. Slay grabs the kill.
They don't get the ace, but that's only because Wild Turtle just respawned and they should be able to get themselves the Baron. There is no jungler to contest them. Gigabyte Marines, these guys win another fight. They do it so well, and they don't lose a single member.
Synchronized backs, everybody getting ready to start the push-up yet again. Sterix Gage purchased now on that Kha'Zix.
Now bear in mind that this is another smite fight that Levi wins against Svenskeren. He does not get kicked back into the rest of his team, and then Stark goes in. He's the primary focus. Optimus does his job because he's able to get the kill onto Wild Turtle. And this is where you think, oh, this is a little bit risky for the Gigabyte Marines. Why do you want to keep extending onto this fight? But just look at the poke constantly coming out from Slay and Archie. Optimus up on the flank just trying to do what he can. And the way in which the Gigabyte Marines just play this so slowly. They don't try too hard to force anything. TSM, they're always on the retreat and they don't have the mana or the health bars to really commit. So they run out of options and eventually it leads to their death.
TSM have now put themselves in a spot, now found themselves in a spot, I should say, where things are going to get very dicey very quickly off the back of just one or two more small mistakes. They've really got to play a sound game of League of Legends. if they want to stabilize here and not allow the Gigabyte Marines to make an even greater advantage out of this. They're now up 5K in a game that was much closer. They've got 3 Drakes, 2 of which are Infernals, thus multiplying the damage from the Ziggs and the Zed and the Kazakhs that much further. This is a scary situation.
But let's not forget that we wanted to see a little bit more slow, calmer play, and that is not what we had at the beginning of this game.
Nope.
We had another level 3 skirmish in the enemy jungle. We had trades constantly back and forth, a number of ganks all across the map. TSM are not about playing this slow game, and I feel like that the Gigabyte Marines are just so much more adept at playing this fast-paced, reactive style that is working so beautifully for them.
This is like deja vu, Vedius. We underestimated Gigabyte Marines in week 1 of the play-ins, and now going into week number 2, everybody was like, yeah, it's gonna be hard for them. TSM's the favorite team, and Gigabyte Marines is just stepping up. This team is just impressing and surprising and shattering expectations time and time and time again.
And it's not just the Optimus and Levi show, right? Sure, those two are having a great game, but look at Slay in his performance, the way in which Archie's constantly providing the utility for his team, and Stark, with all the plays being the frontline tank, this whole team is just performing spectacular.
Which is exactly what you want to see from a team looking to prove itself on the international stage. As
And as
Slay
I
gets
say that,
himself, hey man, he got out mechanics.
Yeah, he
Press
did.
R, win the game. Bjergsen takes him out.
It's one of the risks of playing Ziggs. He's a little short range, or he does have a lot of harassment and poke. When you get close to that tower, Bjergsen's eyeing you. He wants to see that opportunity, and he is able to find that pick. So this will stop now the pressure coming out from the Gigabyte Marines. They have been able to expose an inhibitor down bottom, but again, TSM won't lose too much off the back of that objective.
TSM get themselves some breathing room, some long-awaited breathing room against this Gigabyte Marines push. Now they've still got that for another 5 or 6 seconds or so. Down almost 7,000 gold. 1 inhibitor exposed, but none down. That's the big thing, too. The Baron push came, and now it's gone, and they didn't lose any inhibs. There's not that extra pressure.
Yeah, but the sieging power is still very strong with the Gigabyte Marines. All they need to do is send Optimus up onto a side lane, who at this point can 1v1 anyone. Bear in mind, he's got 2 levels on Bjergsen. He's got an entire level on Haunter. He's completed both the Black Lever and the Ghost Blade, working towards his Dusk Blade of Drakthar.
And such a sinister name for him.
I know, right? And when you're an 8-3 but that's even more sinister.
Yeah, the
right?
whole thing's just a sinister situation to have to deal with. The man is frightening. Especially if you are Wild Turtle. I mean, Bjergsen's at least got the Zhonya's Hourglass.
Yeah.
He's got a barrier. He's got tools to prevent this. But Wild Turtle, you catch yourself anywhere near Optimus and Biofrost isn't sitting right there on top of you, you are dead.
Yeah, no Sash will save you now. You will not be able to remove that death mark. But he still has to get the damage down. It's all about Biofrost's exhaust. Now we actually see Stark posturing, well, back. He ends up getting hit in the face by a ball.
Yeah, good disengage from TSM, making sure that Stark isn't able to get in there, find an explosive cast. Levi forced to jump back. Biofrost jumping in. TSM deciding this might be where they want to fight, but Bjergsen is down! That is not the way you want to make a fight happen. TSM going to be jumped on. Optimus into the fight. Wild Turtle taking low. Haunter on the back line. Redemption comes in, and Haunter will not find anything. Levi again going to be occupying 3, and Gigabyte Marines take down 4.
Unbelievable teamfight win from the Gigabyte Marines. They get themselves 4 kills, and Captain Flowers, I think they're going to take game 2.
Gigabyte Marines are looking to push this to match point against TSM in round 2 of the MSI play-ins. Biofrost will try to defend, but 1 versus 5 as Braum? I don't think so. 2-0, Gigabyte Marines.
What a game.
Listen to that crowd.
You know, like, at first, people are like, all right, TSM, they lose the first game, it happens. They were a little bit too overzealous. They tried to make too many plays happen, and fair play to the Gigabyte Marines, they punished very well.
Right.
Game 2, surely they'll reset, they'll cool down, they'll play a little bit more conservative style. But they still make a lot more skirmishes, but this time it definitely goes much more in the favor of TSM. They have more of the goal lead in the early game. They're setting up a lot of plays. They're the ones now punishing that of the Gigabyte Marines. But when it comes to these team fights, the way in which these guys coordinate, the way in which they execute is just so enjoyable to watch, and they seem to have TSM's number.
Yeah, every single time you're seeing Levi get so aggressive in this early game too. You talk about, oh, maybe TSM can take it slower and steadier. Maybe things we can just tap the brakes a little bit, put on the cruise control, have a nice drive through the country. Not when Levi's in the car.
Levi.
That's not going to happen. The man is always looking to make the moves, and with the Gigabyte Marines now 2-0 over TSM, we're going to send things over to the desk to get their thoughts on that game.
Look, Flowers, I didn't think we'd be here. 2-0 up for Gigabyte Marines. I thought maybe they would take a game, I'll be honest. But they are absolutely dominating, and I think the first thing that we have to look at, gentlemen, is that draft phase coming through. Big changes here on the side of the Gigabyte Marines. In terms of that Zed in the mid lane, how did you feel about this one overall?
Both teams making some changes. You know, we talked a little bit about how flimsy on the one side for TSM were. They finally bring a few more tanks, and while that won't win the game for you, it certainly should, in theory, make a skirmish-focused GPL team in the Gigabyte Marines a little bit slower to snowball through. So I like the adjustments that TSM made, but they didn't really end up getting a lot of the engages in their favor.
Yeah, there were tank composition, more of a pick type of comp here with the Nautilus, Ashe, lock people down with Lee Sin to kick them in, follow up, things like that. Standard TSM actually really did like their team composition. They were against a hard to execute, like one of the hardest to execute comps, no hard crowd control, all slows with like a Zig Satchel in there, Gragas Flash Body Slam, like not committal stuff or full committal stuff if they go in. Like they actually managed to execute on that though.
Which was absolutely crazy because when we saw that Zed locked in, I know we were talking as a desk, like if this guy doesn't get a bunch of kills in the early game, this is going to be a massive issue. This could be a big weakness. But the Zed, despite the fact that TSM found early leads, still found a way to get back into the game. And as we bring up our first replay, we can take a look at a dragon fight that really started to turn it in the favor of the Gigabyte Marines.
Exactly, and as we set up this fight, you can see how the Gigabyte Marines are closing in from multiple angles, and it at first starts looking okay, maybe that TSM can get out, but then so much damage gets put down right as Optimus goes into the fight, and it's very tough to deal with that Zed down.
And that's the thing, they actually bring them into a choke point, right? Like coming at multiple angles, bringing them towards the blue buff, forcing them to fight in this small area against the Ziggs, against the Kha'Zix that can jump on you. Gragas also excels in small places like this, and you would expect that when you look at TSM's team composition, they also want to fight in those small choke points. So they're happy going into that, being funneled into that area to hit the Syndra stun, the Lee Sin kick, things like this. But that all started as an afterthought. They were pushed into the choke point after the fight had already broken out. And that's why they're going to end up going down, because Gigabyte Marine's consistent damage was higher.
You can see TSM kind of heavy looks on their faces. Definitely has to be rough at this stage, adapting. Coming in game one, you go, hey, we can brush it off. We played a little sloppy, we can clean it up going to game two. But even they did clean it up a little bit in the early game, and it was not enough. However, for me, looking back on that replay, it feels like Levi just completely dominating these fights. Whenever he is alive after the initial burst damage comes out, he just cleans up every time.
And a lot of that is the change that Zed kind of has in these fights is if he doesn't get exhausted, if he doesn't get locked down, he's a monster, so you have to deal with him from a mid lane perspective. Then Levi has damage on this Kha'Zix. Slay is putting out considerable amounts of AoE throughout the fight as well. So while you're dealing with the Zed, suddenly the rest of the team's dying to all of these other damage threats.
And it forces the Zhonya's out of the Syndra, so you can't go straight into the full damage route. It helps enough to keep you alive from one assassin, but there's so many of them coming at you. How do you actually Zhonya's out of a Kha'Zix burst?
It's good that you bring that up, because in our second replay, we see Bjergsen trying to Zhonya's one of these assassins, only to realize that there's going to be two jumping into the fray.
Yeah, suddenly, too little too late when he does get to use the Zhonya's, dodging, honestly, a karma. But this is the thing, right? With two assassins there, the Zhonya's timing's impossible. There's nothing to keep him alive. And this is that big point in the game where the Gigabyte Marines actually utilize the last dragon fight to continue to break it open. They get structures after structures in the top lane throughout all of this, and their Ziggs composition actually found time to prosper and actually shine.
Yeah, we saw there, that's when the tower trade started happening. Once we finally saw a gold lead, admittedly, Gigabyte had taken some of the dragons in the early game, potentially something we could consider a lead, but as after that point, it felt like they were 100% in the driver's seat throughout the rest of the game.
Yeah, and I think fundamentally a lot of this is actually TSM committing to multiple places at once, right? They're being pulled apart on the map, and that's just the hard fast. We mentioned this nature with which the Vietnamese side actually carries themselves, but TSM are not responding by being five, even with their team composition. They're split all the time trying to match, and that's a big problem.
One thing to note is I think the vision control they had early on was better in game two. They certainly got the early game picks and skirmishes and control, and that was the TSM where we were like, okay, maybe this is them fighting back now in game two. They won't fall behind and then just lose the game after it. But TSM just kept overcommitting to some of these fights you're talking about, where like realistically, if they can get out of that without taking a fight and just hold the game even, that Zed is slowly not really going to find those targets anymore.
Yeah, definitely. However, things continue to go wrong as we bring up our next replay, our Acer replay. of this fantastic Dragon Steel coming in. It was the Baron in game 1 that was the nail in the coffin. This time around, it was Levi with this Dragon Steel into this extended fight that just did so much for the Gigabyte Marine.
You can make a montage play of Levi from this tournament alone on his steals and how smooth they've been, but it's, as you said, not only just a steal, it's then they clean up the entire fight from that. Like, Levi is buying enough time for the rest of the team. Again, Slay gets a good ultimate on multiple people, and it's an extended fight. This is where Optimus will have multiple rotations of the cooldown, and that's like a triple or a quadra kill in his mind waiting to happen, but it's patient from the Gigabyte Marines. They move in forward, Archie gets the speed up, and it's enough to take the rest of the fight. Like, this is Gigabyte Marines not just going super aggressive and running right into it, actually playing the fights out at the pace that they need to.
And that's something that you were talking about earlier, Rusty. This is kind of the pit composition on the side of TSM, kind of like that shotgun. They get one shot, they kill a couple people, that's the fight that they win. But when you get extended, it just feels like there's no way you're going to match the damage output of that Kha'Zix, of that Zed.
And you keep fighting the Gigabyte Marines inside the jungle. You keep playing the game of League of Legends at their pace, then you're playing in their ballpark and giving them too many opportunities to come back into games, with TSM having a gold lead in this one. Decent enough size, you would say, that they should have been able to push that, accelerate that, and close out the game. But then they kept fighting in the jungle. They kept giving these opportunities.
And I think that's the really interesting thing, is so much of the talk after game 1 was, oh, TSM won't lose a game if it's even. They won't lose a game if they're ahead. Well, they just did. So TSM clearly have a lot more issues than just a level 1 going awry, because they were playing right into the Gigabyte Marines for almost the last 20 minutes of that game.
It just feels like a little bit not coordinated on the side of TSM. And of course, as we look towards further in the game, it seems like it only gets harder from here. However, we're going to step away. When we return, we'll see if Gigabyte Marines can complete the sweep against TSM. Meet us back here for Game 3 after the break.
And first blood to the Gigabyte Marines jungler. 2 games in a row, Vedius. But TSM responds in force. Monster is a raid boss in the middle of 3 men. Does not matter. They are able to find 1. Levi's going to be caught by the stun on the very edge now. A little bit more damage to take him out, but the shutdown over for Slay on Bjerg. TSM is going to be chased all the way. Bjergsen falls. Bio falls. 2-0. Gigabyte Marines. LCS representatives to earn their way into the main event of MSI today.
And who would have thought that it would be the Gigabyte Marines not only just defeating TSM, but the way in which they're doing it too. The fact that they're playing fantastic early games, they seem to have, to me at the very least, have the better team fighting compared to TSM. And I feel like that TSM are playing in a little bit too much to the style of the Gigabyte Marines. I feel like that they are a team that are a little bit more calculated. They should be a little bit more calmer in the way in which they play, but every time they're going for these skirmishes, Sven Skaren in particular, he seems to be trying to make these plays happen that the rest of his team aren't necessarily expecting. And while we've had a lot of hype around Haunter and his expectations, like, yes, sure, he's on a tank, but and in his Rumble game, like, he hasn't been having the standout performances that you would expect from him after his regular season and finals performance.
And let's go back to Sven Skaren and Haunter in particular, because if you look back at the last time that TSM was on an international stage, if you look back at Worlds 2016, we talked about Haunter not showing up in the way that people sort of hoped he would. There were a lot of times where he wasn't able to do the job that TSM needed him to do. During Worlds, there was also Sven Skaren getting his huge, international buff that people talk about, where it was him and Bjergsen being the ones who were trying to, like, just take TSM as far as they could. And so now the question was, will Haunter keep playing the way that he has in Spring Split, considering his massive improvements, or will he potentially have some of the same problems as Worlds? And right now, we're seeing Haunter have some of those same problems. And as for Sven and his international buff, turn it on.
Yeah, it's still yet to
turn it on,
right? Like, he's clearing his camps, like he gets the red, and then he gets the blue. But where's the international one, right?
Right.
But
we want the big purple Baron buff of MSI.
But now we're looking into what could very well be the final draft for TSM, and you have to really wonder what you have to take off the board, right? Do you ban away the Kazakhs? Because bear in mind that TSM now are on blue side. They could, if they wanted to, ban away the Kazakhs, ban away the Elise, and then either lock in the Lee Sin for themselves or ban away the Lee Sin too. Expect the Gigabyte Marines to ban away Ivern, and now you have a much narrower jungle pool, especially if they ban away the Graves as well. What do you then move towards? The recently nerfed Rengar? Do you perhaps bring out a new jungler that many people haven't been playing? Like, a lot of question marks around how far did TSM try and take Levi off his comfort, because I do feel like he is the big, consistent reason as to where the Gigabyte Marines are getting their leads from.
You've got to do something about him. I mean, Levi has been the catalyst for this team going on. Even last game where we saw everything be much closer for a long while, once Levi got his opportunity to get into those fights, it's almost, he knows when his window of opportunity is there. He knows his damage potential. He knows when he can get in and get a kill, and he always does it. And even if he dies doing it, right? You see him get into the back line, he takes one or two people out with him, and then the Gigabyte Marines just run over the rest of the game.
Yep. Well, let's see if TSM change very much up. For the time being, they're still going to invest that ban onto the cannon. They do not want to give it to Stark or even Slay, given that you can mix and match between the two roles.
And speaking of Slay, let's talk real quick about bottom lane Ziggs that's won 2 games in a row now, because this is a very unusual pick that was very popular back at the start of Spring Split. And TSM is saying, you know what? Get this out of my game. 80 carries. Where's the Bork meta?
Yep. To be fair, it is a very safe champion to play in the AD carry position. It's difficult to really play wrong unless you have poor positioning and you're always sitting on the front line. You just sit back, you throw out this poke, your ability to siege is really unmatched. And now Slay could very well be forced onto an alternative AD carry. He has brought out the Ashe and the Caitlyn and the Varus during the group stages, so he definitely has these champions in his pool. But the question is, which direction do they want to take? Conventionally, he has been more of that utility AD carry for the side of Gigabyte Marines.
LeBlanc, a ban TSM has banned during the second phase the past couple of games. Going to go ahead and add that to their first phase ban roster this time around. One more ban from the Marines. TSM actually not targeting the jungle at all.
No, they're not. Now, I would expect the Graves to come out from the Gigabyte Marines, unless... I mean, they did, the Gigabyte Marines did bring out the Kazakhs into Sven Skaren's Graves in Game 1, so perhaps they actually just want to take the Nautilus off the board. Oh no, the Lulu, okay, that actually makes a lot of sense. So now I wonder if TSM actually maybe go for a first pick Gragas here. Now, it has been a big consistent pick for Stark, but instead they're saying, you know what, we have more priority on getting ourselves a strong bottom lane.
Yep, the Karma locked in first and foremost, and they did it fast, too. They were not hesitating locking in that pick. Getting that one for themselves. Remember, the Biofrost has been drawing a lot of attention in the second half of the ban phase from the Gigabyte Marines as well, so getting that support in there is going to force them to change that strategy up a little bit.
Now, I wonder if you go for a Graves and either a Gragas, or you lock yourself in the Ashe. Because bear in mind, this is more of a comfort pick for Slay. It does provide an engage tool, and it is a pretty safe AD carry for Slay. And then if you want, on your next rotation, you can get yourself the Gragas. But I feel like if you're TSM, you want to get yourself the Gragas now. Safe top laner, see what else Stark can bring out into this matchup.
He's not actually got pre-existing information, by the way. He's just making these predictions as they happen, calling out the champions that are going to be locked in. Vadius knows what's going through the Gigabytes Marines' mind, and what they want to have going through their minds is how good that 3-0 will feel if they can lock that in here. But Graves and Ashe, the first couple of picks of their draft. TSM now thinking about that Gragas that you mentioned earlier. But nope, instead they decide to lock in the Lee beforehand. They want to put Sven on this again, even though his performance on it was not phenomenal in game number 2. They still say, look, this is one of his staple champions. This is one he's known for. This is one that he can get us back into this series with.
Yeah, and I think that he has the ability to do it. For every down that Svenskeren has, he also has an up, right? Like, this guy definitely has the ability to turn the game around or in favor of Team Solomon. So they will net themselves the Gragas up in the top lane as well. Pretty safe now. If you're the Gigabyte Marines, I think you should actually go for the Fizz right now. You have the ability to flex it both mid and top as they have done in the past, and you're actually guaranteeing yourself a pretty potent top laner too, right? It's a really good matchup into the Gragas as well. And I think that Stark is an individual who can bust it out and can play it pretty effectively.
Well, TSM has now taken away 2 of the picks. Oh my goodness.
Okay. Now this was a support that was brought out during group stages from Archie. He played the Cannon with the Sona before. So it is a very squishy champion. It is something you have to be very mindful of. However, it's great into champions like Karma who are very poke heavy. She's not quite the same as Nami, who's very much disengage orientated. She follows the style of the Gigabyte Marines, who want to fight, and they want to do it in a big 5v5 scenario.
Well, that's definitely going to be an interesting pick to see. One thing I was going to mention was how TSM has taken away 2 of Gigabyte Marines' picks in the previous 2 matches. The Marines were running Karma and Gragas in both of those games, and now TSM is going to be using those. Kha'Zix's also one of those champions that was showing up in both games so far, but the Marines have opted for the Graves instead this time. Remember that in game number 2 it was banned. Game number 1 it was picked up first by TSM and Svenskeren. Now into the second part of the bans, Varus will be removed by the Marines, and TSM decides to take Rumble off the table, keep it away from Stark.
So I expect, I was just about to say a second AD carry ban to come out, except I was more expecting the Caitlyn rather than the Lucian. But we do know that Turtle is the sort of player that can play both the aggressive along with the utility style of ADs. Now I think that he is hedging a little bit more to the Caitlyn pick. Will be delayed a little bit in terms of spike, but we'll still have a very strong laning phase. And we also see the Fizz ban there. We talked about how it has the ability to go into both the Gragas and also the mid lane. But I feel like the Gigabyte Marines are guaranteed to save their mid lane pick for last. So if you're top, in terms of safe picks, I'm just trying to consider what you could go for. I mean, Camille was recently nerfed, but you could still theoretically pick it into this matchup. Starky could also go for something like a Renekton as well. Does fall under his champion pool, and it would give him that pushing ability up in the top half of the map.
How do you keep doing it? Just one after another, after another, after another. Renekton locked in on the side of Gigabyte Marines. We talked about this team in general and the research that we did into them going into the start of MSI play-ins. We talked especially about how Renekton Elise is one of the favorite combos for Stark and Levi. Just get in there, be aggressive in the top part of the map, right? Do crazy stuff with that lockdown, that early power, as TSM decides that their comp is going to feature Ezreal and Syndra as the carries.
Now, I don't think Optimus should go for Zed here. It's so much harder to kill the AD carry when you're going up against a composition like that. I feel like you would go for something a little bit more utility-based, it seems. Now, he did bring out Zilean on day 1 of the plans. This goes against the typical playstyle that he is used to, but it puts more of the emphasis on the rest of his team. Optimus is confident after the performance, especially. How can you not be confident in Levi, right? He is playing the Graves, he is playing the carry, and the ability to siege and their ability to poke is so strong with the Gigabyte Marine. So this is a composition that they are very comfortable with. Whereas TSM, they've built more of a poking, pick style of composition, which takes a while to scale. So I want to see more slow, gradual play from the TSM squad, and I don't want to see them fall prey into these little skirmishes that Gigabyte Marines are so effective at forcing.
Problem is, with the pick composition, it's hard to pick people when they're instantly brought right back to life.
That's true, very true.
So the Zillion Ultimate could be very effective at shutting down the main mission of TSM in this game, but they're going to have to make sure they find a way to work around that if they want to keep themselves afloat in this series. One more win for Gigabyte Marines will take them into qualification for the main MSI event, send TSM to the last chance match on Saturday in what would be one of the biggest upsets that we have seen in a while. But it's so close to being a reality for the Gigabyte Marines, the representative from the GPL. Surprised everyone in week number 1 by going 5-1 in their group, and some people would argue that it probably would have been a 6-0 if the last game would have mattered, but they had the spot already locked in, so still the best record in their group. Now having a great out-the-gate sprint against TSM in these first couple of matches, seeing if they can lock it in with that 3-0.
And it's fascinating because the GPL as a region, they did well at All-Stars. They've been gradually doing better and better every year. Their level has been improving. And now we've gotten to a point where Optimus, Levi, Archie, these are some old names in the League of Legends scene. These guys have been around for a while. And now they're really demonstrating to the world they have what it takes against some of the best. Some of the best regions in the world, like North America, has always been considered a strong region internationally. And now we're getting to see the Gigabyte Marines bring it to them, 2-0.
Slay and Wild Turtle just kind of going to pass by. Nope, not anymore. One shot fired off as Turtle walks away, just taking that one, doesn't really care too much about it. No level 1 invade coming out from either side. That's a difference that we've seen between this game and the previous 2. Remember that the past couple of matches, TSM has tried to move into Gigabyte Marine territory at level 1, either through the Raptor camp or through the bottom lane Tri-Brush. Both times it failed for them. This time around, they're saying, you know what? We tried to invade 2 games. We lost 2 games.
Let's cool out.
Maybe the invade plan isn't a good plan.
Trial and error, you know?
Maybe that don't work. Well, the Gigabyte Marines will start off Levi at his Raptor camp, clearing out those tiny ones, get level 2 fast enough to have that much more potency against the big one. Svenskeren starting his own Raptors, but Lee Sin is not the best Raptor-taking champion without a decent leash. He goes pretty low doing this.
Normally you start with the W because it just gives you a bit of extra defense, and the utility that you get along with the heal is actually pretty effective. I think it's about a 6-second cooldown on W, so it's actually it's the better option when going up against the Raptors, and you kind of need the pull from your mid laner. So it's not too bad for Bjergsen. He still won't lose that much in terms of the shove because Optimus, I mean, he's playing Zillion, right? Like the bombs, pretty high cooldown early on.
Right.
But my eyes are also on the bottom lane. Like, what can we expect from Walton and Biofrost into a matchup that you don't commonly see from the Sona? Pretty low in terms of mobility, but actually they get the level 2.
Archie in some trouble here. Turtle needs one more Mystic shot to do it, but will not find that. Slay having to use the heal to keep his support alive.
Now, this is much more calculated aggression from the bottom lane of TSM. They realize that they hit that level 2 spike and they want to try and take advantage of it. Sona's trading power isn't the best when your opponents have a lane advantage. So for the time being, they're just going to be on the back foot, focus on sustaining, dealing with the poke coming out from Karma. And they largely will deal or lose out on the push simply because of how great Karma is during these early levels.
Looks like it's time for Levi to work his way into the enemy jungle, Vedius. 3 minutes into the game. It's about that time.
Oh, here we go.
The gank from behind. Turtle and Biofrost have summoner spells up and ready to go. Turtle goes ahead, drops that ward back there just to make sure. Svenskeren clearing out the top part of his own jungle. Levi deciding it's time to show himself. Biofrost and Turtle recognize what's coming. Levi slides in, eats a lot of damage though, having to flash away. Turtle with first blood! Now Slay and Archie can't really find anything else. Having to back themselves away. Wild Turtle with double buffs now. Very scary to deal with. Levi, his aggro finally comes back to bite him.
And we were talking about the bottom lane, and you couldn't ask for a better start. Double buff as the action continues in mids.
When asked for a better start, this might be one, except, yes it is. Svenskeren, he misses the Sonic Wave, but they still have the setup they need. And TSM is off to a phenomenal beginning in game number 3. That's a lot of minions crashing into that tier 1 turret.
Oh, it is. Optimus does have the teleport, so we'll be able to soak up some of it. But largely, this is not going well. And Stark!
Okay! Stark's just going to be slapped around. He got to play this role the past couple of games. Now Hauntzer's on the champion. Anything you can do, I can do too.
And this is much more of what we were expecting from TSM. The synergy between Sven and Bjergsen to get him going in the middle lane. Haunzer demonstrating his proficiency up in the top lane. And this is not typically what you would expect from the Renekton, but he's playing into the minions. He actually uses the Fury in his Slice and Dice. He no longer has the heal on his Q because it's on cooldown. And that's what results in him losing out on the 1v1, so just poor management of his passive right there. But also in the bottom lane, the fact that Levi comes in from the flank. You expect him. Oh, now we see a gank in mid.
Okay, Bjergsen, no flash available, does have cleanse if that could get him out of some trouble. Getting himself away, Svenskeren jumping in, just trying to protect him a little bit better. Bjerg low, but still okay. Svenskeren gonna go ahead, decide to get back to base. And for the first time, Vedius, the Gigabyte Marines early game rotation machine seems to be not working.
Certainly seems like it. They tried to make things happen, and TSM respond in a way in which allows them to be the ones to gain the advantage. Really nice subtle sidestep from Bjergsen there as well to dodge the stuns coming out from Optimus, realizing that if he walks into it, that's going to be his life gone. And again, the pressure continues in the top lane.
Oh! Haunzer has had enough.
He heard us talking about him, and he was like, oh, you guys want to say something?
This is a different TSM, Vedius. It's like TSM was just sort of goofing around the past couple of games, and now they're saying, all right, we're gonna lose if we lose this game. Everybody play serious now. And they are just having an awesome early game.
Oh, they are, and this is gonna mean so much for the 1v1 matchup too. The fact that Hauntzer's gotten himself 2 solo kills means that Renekton now effectively has no value in this laning phase. He can't push anymore. The fact that Hauntzer's going to be able to get early armor means that he can't even trade against him anymore. Hauntzer's value in team fights is so much larger simply due to the utility that he brings. Stark is really going to struggle to find an impact, largely just because he's losing out on this 1v1.
I mean, you talk about Renekton, you talk about a champion who generally the discussion about him is, yeah, he's strong in lane, but he falls off later on. When you die 1v1 to your opponent twice in lane, you're sort of removing the strength of your champion.
Oh, for sure. And now look at the CS discrepancies as well. A solid 20 lead on every single member of Team Solo Mid. This is so much more of what we expected from the North American squad.
Taking those picks that the Gigabyte Marines used last game seems to be working out pretty well for them. Taking the Gragas away from Stark, taking the Karma away from Archie. Bjergsen now back on the Syndra too. Optimus just bombing the wave, trying to keep Bjergsen zoned away and maintain control as much as he can. Bjerg doesn't really care too much about that either.
And it also ties into the investment from Levi, right? Because normally you expect him to be ganking either the top lane or the middle lane. And when you have a Renekton who ends up getting pushed in, perhaps Levi should have invested more of his resources towards the top half of the map. Perhaps he should have looked to try and snowball this Renekton up against Haunzer, which works for them very nicely in game 1. But now he invested a gank down in the bottom lane. It ends up going horribly wrong for him. Wildton and Biofrost already had the stronger push, and now they're going to be winning out on the trade, along with Svenskeren looking for a dive down bot.
Svenskeren wants to make this one happen, gets the kick onto Slay, who is just going to be destroyed. Wild Turtle grabbing the kill on that one, going up to 2-0 as TSM will take turret first blood 8 minutes in.
Very clean map movements from Team Solo Mid. They push out the middle lane with Syndra. They make a map movement through the river, knowing that they have full vision control around the bottom half of the Gigabyte Marines jungle. And then they easily set up the dive, and Slay and Archie, they know the play is happening, but they're still level 5 and level 4. Wild Turtle is level 7. The fact that TSM have just naturally a massive experience advantage, and it continues up in the top lane.
Meanwhile, top lane, I don't even know what to say about that one. Haunzer with his 3rd solo kill! The man is running wild! True Shot Barrage fired off, not gonna find its way onto Optimus, predicting him to maybe back up in that brush, but He won't be
5,000 gold lead onto TSM right now.
Svenskeren taking down the Elemental Drake. The first Elemental Drake of this series that will go the way of TSM, Vedius.
Oh boy. That was close. I mean, it's tough to know, right? TSM are just playing immaculately right now. They are really putting the hurt onto the Gigabyte Marines. We just saw such great early play on all 3 lanes. The dive in mid, the turnaround in bot, the solo kills up top lane.
And those solo kills, that's the Haunter that people were
exactly.
expecting to see coming into this game. That's the guy who, remember, in NALCS this split, we had a lot more Korean talent coming into the top lane. There were a lot of questions about whether the current NALCS top laners from 2016 would be able to stand up against them. And Haunter just rose to the occasion, still being one of the best, if not the best top laner in the NALCS. And then to come into this series in the first 2 games and just have subpar performances that he didn't accomplish a lot on, this is his redemption.
Yep. And if you're the Gigabyte Marines, that now you have to try and figure out how to play from a 5K gold deficit against a team that knows extremely well how to snowball their advantages. Know that they've kept their bottom lane in the bottom half of the map, but I expect to see Biofrost start roaming around along with Svenskeren and maybe even Bjergsen too, to invest deeper vision so they can start taking these other tier 1 towers and extend their control over the game.
And playing from that kind of a deficit is always hard, but it's especially difficult when you have a team like Gigabyte Marines whose experience doesn't lend them towards that situation ever. This is a very dominant team in the GPL. They're never sitting at a 5,000 gold deficit early on. This is not something that normally happens.
So, but also getting 2-0'd by the Gigabyte Marines is also not what normally happens to teams from mid, right? So the fact that they've been able to bounce back in such a...
Oh, even stealing the damn wolf.
You will have nothing, Gigabyte Marines.
And you will like it. Gigabyte Marines trying to hold their own jungle, but as soon as Haunter steps up, they got to step back. And Gragas very, very scary right now. Optimus and Slay trying to get their fancy feet on, dodge away from some skill shots. Turtle going to be in some trouble and deleted. Just a little bit too far forward.
Wouldn't be a TSM game if Wild Turtle didn't get caught.
If Wild Turtle didn't get caught at least once, I don't know what we'd be watching, but that's a catch that's going to buy Gigabyte a little bit of time, maybe, or the TSM push might just take this down regardless.
TSM feel that they have the level advantage, they have the gold advantage, and they're going to go for time.
Very nice combo from Haunter. Resilient save going to be big, though, as Haunter gets chain CC'd and can't do anything about it. Nice turnaround from Gigabyte Marines.
So, this time round, Gigabyte Marines are able to punish the dive from Team Solar mid. They feel confident enough to try and set up onto the tower that they can even go for the dive. They feel like, hey, you know, we've got such a big gold advantage. There's no reason why, at the very least, we can't burn that Zillion ultimate. They are not expecting the return from the Gigabyte Marines. Good flash there from Slay.
Slay staying alive. Archie barely surviving, even after exhausting the Syndra. You talked about the squishiness of the Sona when they locked it in, Vedius, and the champion's very easy to kill if you aren't watching. Svenskeren trying to get in there, but the minion eats the Sonic Wave instead.
This will be another tower going in favor of TSM. Good control overall. The fact that they've now taken all the outer objectives, likely going to be waiting for the next Infernal Drake to spawn so they can pick that one up for themselves and then start working their way onto these tier 2s. The tier 2s become a little bit harder because you have to utilize more map movements, so you gain control of the jungle and then you rotate between either top and mid or mid and bot while you keep Haunter off onto a side lane. But given the way that they're playing and the way that they traditionally play during the regular season when they have a lead, you would expect TSM to start very efficiently closing out this game.
And one thing to still keep in mind along with that is Stark is mostly still a non-factor.
Yep.
He's a level down, almost 2 levels down. Haunter will take level 11 right now. He's got 40 less farm, and he's 0-3-0. This is effectively a 4v5 for the time being for the Gigabyte Marines.
And it's funny how at the very start during Champion Select, you talked about how Optimus will move away from these carries and shift onto more of a utility mid laner to play around his team.
Right.
And the one instance where he does, Levi isn't having the same sort of game that you would expect from him. Stark is dying 1v1 in the lane. The bottom lane ends up going horribly wrong because of Wild Turtle and Bifrost getting the turnaround. So now Optimus can't really have an impact either because he's got no team to play around.
Right, it's just the situation that he put himself in by picking a utility mid laner instead of something like a Zed, or instead of something like a Syndra that we see Bjergsen on again this game. 0-0 and 1 for him. Morello Namicon and Sorcerer's Shoes. He's got the cooldown reduction and the mana he needs to just keep on spamming. And a blue buff always makes that job easier to go with it. 50 seconds till Infernal Drake spawns, and you can bet TSM's going to be locking that one down.
Only 14.5 minutes into the game, and TSM have a 5,500 gold lead. Just unbelievable how swiftly they dismantled the Gigabyte Marines.
And I think a lot of it came down to the way the draft was done, taking away some of those big picks that Gigabyte Marines were using to be so effective. TSM properly denied them. They were able to make the adjustments they needed, and we talked about that going into this. Adjusting in a best of 5 is actually a huge part of it. It can mean it can mean the difference between winning and losing sometimes.
Oh, it certainly can. I do feel that we're going to see a lot more value on this Gragas pick coming into the rest of the game, should TSM be able to close this one out. I mean, in terms of expectations, you would imagine that a team with this kind of a gold lead at this point of the game...
We can't even talk about expectations.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Just because of the way games 1 and 2 played out, but Infernal Drake will drop to TSM. That's two Elemental Drakes, excuse me, to 0 for these guys. Still sitting on almost a 6K gold lead, 15.5 minutes in, but now, what do they do with that? How do they translate that into an even greater lead? You mentioned how it's harder to push onto those tier 2s now, but that's what they've got to start doing.
Yep, well, they have some big item spikes to help them do it. Trinity Force being completed onto Bjergsen, onto Turtle rather. While Bjergsen has...
that would be a new one.
It would definitely be a new one. Instead, he's going to stick to the stand of Morello Nomicon. Given that they have pretty significant item advantages over their lane counterparts, I mean that TSM have, I suppose, 2 options. They could just group mid and siege and go for a risky dive, but always you have to respect the idea that Optimus can just revive someone. So even if you pick someone underneath the turret, that could actually end up going horribly wrong for you like it did earlier on for Haunter. So instead, the better way is to just start moving into the enemy jungle and just get that deep vision down. You want to make sure that you have full control over what Gigabyte Marines are trying to do in their own half of the map, and then you either look for a pick, or instead you just constantly rotate between 2 lanes and just gradually siege down onto these turrets.
And I like what we're seeing from Svenskera in this game too, because he's not doing that, I've got to make a play, I got to get in, let's just go right now type of stuff that we saw in game number 2. He's playing it more slowly. It's like they said, hey, look, we're going to win this game, but we got to make sure we're smart about it instead of just trying to make it happen right now, right here, all the time, go, 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 110%. 1-0 and 1 on the Lee Sin. Best performance yet. Bjergsen, though, caught out, bursted down, no way out of there. Kill credit goes over to Levi. That's his first one of the game.
So Gigabyte Marines, they actually find themselves a pick onto Bjergsen, who was really overextending himself in the top, or through the middle lane. He thought that he could get himself a pick onto Archie. He saw how much damage he did earlier on, and perhaps the bloodlust clouded his eyes. This will give a little bit more freedom to the Gigabyte Marines now. They can buy a little bit more time, given that the powerful mid laner of TSM is now taken off the map.
Haunter picking himself up a Rift Herald, a seldom taken buff. Usually that thing only goes down when you're so far ahead that you just are looking for something to do. And that's kind of where Haunter is. I mean, with the lead that he currently has over his lane opponent, it's only going to be scarier as Optimus uses the ulti on himself, and Turtle knows to let that expire before finding the last auto attack to take him down.
I like the patience there from Turtle. He knew that Optimus wasn't getting out. Talking about overextended mid laners, that was exactly the same there for Optimus. He had no control over the river. Ends up getting collapsed upon as a result. But now Bjergsen has respawned, and one of your main wave clearers in the Zillion has now been taken off the map. So that small amount of time that you were trying to buy for yourself has now disappeared. And TSM will return to their siege.
Meanwhile, Haunter just keeps on pushing in the top lane, maintaining that 40 CS advantage. TSM looking to see if they can set something up with Svenskeren over this wall. A ward will spot him out, so Slay and Archie are very aware of exactly what these guys are planning. Levi getting himself away from Haunter, who uses the explosive cast to buy himself some time, flashes over the wall, and he'll be out of there. He buys enough time, distracts enough members of Gigabyte Marines for the rest of TSM to take down the Tier 2.
It's just desperation plays now from the Gigabyte Marines. Teleport and 3 men were invested into trying to kill Haunter, and he walks away scot-free without even taking that much damage. Now the arrow lands on a Bjerg.
Oh, Bjergsen again going to be locked down, but Optimus is out of there. Cannot even chrono break himself. Nice catch from TSM along with another Tier 2.
The turnaround from TSM as Gigabyte Marines try to make a play happen was so clean. The Gigabyte, they just got completely zoned away from that engagement, and it allowed TSM to pick themselves up another Tier 2 tower. Full control. This is the TSM that the fans and the viewers were all predicting to come into this series.
Absolutely is. This is what a lot of people wanted to see from game number 1. It was just kind of, where are they? What are they doing? Where has this TSM been for the first couple of games? But it seems like they finally found their mojo. They finally found how they're going to be able to win this, and they show no signs of stopping. There have been a couple of picks onto Wild Turtle, onto Bjergsen that have paid off for the Gigabyte Marines and have allowed them to stabilize a little bit. But look at Levi, 1, 1, and 2 on the Graves. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad score, but on a team where you're the catalyst for everybody making moves happen, where you're the guy who always gets everything going, if that's all the further you are 20 minutes into the match, who else is going to make those plays?
And it's fascinating how in game 1, Gigabyte Marines were able to snowball a game after one small mistake from TSM. And now here in game 3, we see exactly the same situation except in reverse, where TSM, they were able to find a small window with which they look to punish, but then also you have to give props because Haunter made his own advantages in the top lane. That was no gank. That was not, I mean, I suppose it was
That was just 1v1 outplay.
But that was just Haunter destroying his lane counterpart.
Haunter doing Haunter things. Levi also, that mistake at the level 3 gank bottom side, just, that was essentially gifting double buffs and a kill over to your opponents. It's not like Svenskeren was there and turned it around.
Yeah.
Levi just made the wrong play.
He did. He was not expecting the burst from Biofrost, that's for sure. And now the Baron is up. You can see how much vision is invested from TSM into around the red buff area of Gigabyte Marines. This could be Stark dying once more.
Uh-oh, Stark. He has to pop the ulti just to try to stay alive. And flash. And he's still dead. Oh!
Brutal.
Oh, it's gotta hurt. 4-1 and 1 on Haunter's Gragas. Sunfire Cape plus Iceborne Gauntlet. Stark can't even hurt the dude. And now it's a 5v4. They're gonna push onto the inhibitor turret itself here in the bottom lane. If they can take that inhibitor down, that's the most important one for going for Baron. Remember, pressure on the opposite side of the map makes it very hard to contest that, especially this early on into the game. Still 10 seconds or so before Stark makes his way back into the game, and TSM is not going to risk it. Instead, they just allowed Turtle to take the T2 top and back themselves away.
Very patient play from TSM, taking their time. It would be so difficult for them to lose this game, so there's no need for them to do anything crazy, right? Like, why give your opponents windows with which they can come back? Instead, just take it calm, be cool.
Your 1% loss opportunity is doing something stupid in the enemy base, so why not do something smart and not allow yourself to do that?
Exactly. So Baron is another option for them. They can just continue with what they're doing. They know that Haunter will win this 1v1. I think after the 4th time, you'd be pretty confident that Haunter could win it.
Pretty convincing argument at this point, I'd say. Haunter 4-1 and 1. 0-4 and 0 for Stark. Even though there's 3 kills on the Marines, he's not been a part of anything so far. 70 CS now, too, separating these 2 top laners.
The Flame Horizon is a-coming, but the game might end before we even get there.
Yeah, it actually might. We're coming real close to this one potentially being over. If TSM can lock away this victory, they're over 10,000 gold up just 23 minutes in. Bottom lane inhibitor exposed. Vision in the upper river around Baron. 2-shot barrage fired through. Not going to steal the red buff away like he did the Wolf earlier. Good attempt. No, it was just mostly for scouting purposes anyway.
If I'm nitpicking, I feel like Sven at this point should be moving more with Biofrost to start getting vision around the entrances to the jungle of Gigabyte Marines rather than doing his Krogs, but it is naturally nitpicking. Meanwhile, Haunter is pretty overextended in the bottom lane, but he's level 15 at 23.5 minutes into the game, so I think he's okay. And the pressure will just continue. A lot of focus is being spent around this Baron, and TSM have to be very careful about how they play this, because we've seen the smite wars between Levi and Svenskeren, and I do feel like that Levi is currently winning in the head-to-head.
Yeah, you don't want to take the 50-50 here. That's another one of those throw conditions we were talking about, just opening a window for your opponents to maybe come back into the game. TSM would much rather just zone them away, find some kind of a kill, make it a sure thing. Turtle very strong, 4-1-0 on him. QSS to get out of any CC-based troubles, working on that Blade of the Ruined King to go with his Mana Moon and for his Trinity Force. But now with control wards here in the pit, it's time for TSM to start up Baron.
Full vision over the Gigabyte Marines jungle. The Hawkshot will be used to spot out the Baron, but I don't even think there's much that the Gigabyte Marines can do about it, because they're going to have to face check Haunter.
Svenskeren and Turtle are essentially just duoing this. Levi wants to get in over the wall, but instead he's just going to be killed. He will come back through that Chrono Shift, but not in time to get in there as Svenskeren secures Baron. Haunter goes over the wall, and he is just going to 1v2 these guys all day long. Grabbing the kill onto that Gigabyte Marine's graves, and now looking to make it the Zillion 2. Svenskeren comes in, grabs himself the kill. And that's 2 plus Baron for nothing going the way of TSM.
Very easy Baron take. Starkey's just trying to get the scraps. Gigabyte Marines, they're not even going to go bother back to base. They know that the game is done. They know that there's nothing that they can do. Levi tries to get the steal, but then Haunter, he's just too strong.
He's so strong in this game right now. And that's going to be pretty much all she wrote. They take down the top lane inhibitor turret, take down the top lane inhibitor. Mantra Inspire is going to keep this team as strong as humanly possible. Levi now back alive. Stark going to be juggling around. Svenskeren able to go in, find the kick backwards onto Slay, who's going to escape for now. Turret destroyed though. Wild Turtle pouring some damage back into the fight. The Nexus now down below half. Slay going to be dropping next. And ladies and gentlemen, we are heading to Game 4.
I was not expecting the Game 4 to come in this order.
No.
But I, in some ways, was expecting it to happen. TSM with an exceptionally clean game.
Yeah.
Not only did they punish the mistakes of Levi down in the bottom lane, but they also built their own advantages in the mid lane with Sven and Bjerg, and Haunter getting himself so many great solo kills up in the top. It was just so much of the classic TSM that you'd expect. The 2 solo laners going off, the fact that the bottom lane gets a slight lead, just beautiful execution from the TSM squad.
It really was the cleanest game easily that we've seen so far in this series. And for an in-depth look at exactly how TSM came back and kept themselves afloat, let's send it over to the analysts.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I think we should just jump right into it, jump right into our first replay, our Acer replay. Haunter, an absolute monster in the top lane. We wanted to see TSM get an advantage. It was each individual member of this team over-contributing, I would say, in the early game.
And the thing is, we heard that maybe like Stark had the Renekton as one of these power plays picks for himself, but just doesn't quite respect the damage from the minions early on, and every single time Haunter just walks back up to him and destroys him.
Yeah, he's having a bit of a nightmare, I think, at the top lane. Not a great day. The rest of the map was probably watching him and saying, what is going wrong? But unfortunately for pretty much all of the Gigabyte Marines, it wasn't just this happening in the top lane. Pretty much everywhere you looked, TSM had absolute control. There was really no way into that game for them, except for maybe desperate steals from about 4 minutes.
And we saw in kind of even games, Gigabyte Marines always felt like a team that could fight back, but when TSM built what ended up being an insurmountable gold lead, it feels like these guys just could not do anything in this game overall.
And I think that's honestly what we expected coming into game 1. Like, realistically, the reason everybody said TSM should be the favorite team is because that game, if you take it on its own, is what everybody thought game 1 would look like too. And as we look at further replays from this, you can see how clean TSM, when playing with the lead, can be. I mean, the dive under mid tower is the replay that we want to take a look at. They just go aggressive, get the kills, and just take the tower from it. Like, at this point, the game is already basically out of reach for the Gigabyte Marines. Maybe if somehow they can layer the crowd control perfectly, but TSM, they're in, they're out right before any reaction can really come from the Gigabyte Marines, and it's already gone.
Bjergsen's there. Yeah. Svenskeren's hitting the kicks this time. Wild Turtle was actually 2-0 up in lane. They defused Levi's first initial gank. Everything that TSM did in game number 3 is indicative of where it's meant to be for this team. Contrasting that, however, we saw a Graves from Levi, which I think should have been something like the Elise.
we'll have to see what they want to do. But as we look still at this game, kind of TSM, they did take a risk in the final moments to try to secure that Baron. You heard Captain Flowers, you heard Vedius talking about this is one of those lost conditions. This is one of those areas where you can throw, but they played so well around this, using Haunter to block this out. Turtle fearlessly going over the wall, and I have to say, just a clean Baron take overall.
Yeah, and the decision to go for this Baron is realistically, once you get it, the game is over.
Yep.
So everything is thrown at trying to take the Baron away, but you cannot get through the indomitable Gragas that is just running at everybody. Stacked armor, Levi is just stuck losing, and there's not enough damage that comes out of a more so supportive mid laner, especially in a losing game. So smart item build, I would say, from Haunter, and a well-deserving victory.
You can see how fast the game ends, the low damage all over the place. I mean, some fast math, not quite enough, but Haunter nearly outdamaged the entire team with the Gigabyte Marines. A couple of thousand short on that, but
I mean, just
impressive.
It's absolutely insane how little League of Legends Gigabyte Marines got to play that game. And you feel for them because they went from controlling the map, dominating, playing out these skirmish extended fights, but you just can't afford to get that far behind that early on. That was, I think, one of the most one-sided games we've seen throughout the course of this entire tournament.
Yeah, and one big thing you have to remember, though, when you're looking at this, yes, it's now 2-1 in a series, but it was also Gigabyte Marines pulling out the Zillion Sona composition. They tried it during the group stages of the play-ins, and it was successful to a degree because they were unlocked in laning phase. But now you're against a higher caliber of laner, where you're going to have a harder time actually executing on this comp. I think they just go back to standard.
And we saw exactly that in the bottom lane. The Sona chunked out early, forced the heal. The lack of a heal meant when Levi did go aggressive in the bottom lane, it wasn't really able to keep him alive through the tail end of that to end up in the first couple of kills. So that was one of the real issues with that Sona that we were talking about. I know we're going to discuss this a little bit more as we go through, but I want to see them go back to the first two game style compositions, less on the utility.
All right, well, we'll talk about that in a few minutes, but we're going to be stepping away. Don't go anywhere, because when we return, it is Game 4 between the Gigabyte Marines and TSM.
Biofrost and Turtle recognize what's coming. Levi slides in, eats a lot of damage, though, having to flash away. Turtle with first blood!
You can go Sona. Sona, no flash. All right. We take bottom tower?
Okay, let's go.
Bjergsen, again, going to be locked down, but Optimus is out of there. Cannot even chrono break himself. Right, the Nexus now down below half. Slay going to be dropping next. And ladies and gentlemen, we are heading to Game 4.
Welcome back, everyone, to Game 4 between TSM and the Gigabyte Marines. Of course, TSM kind of up against the wall here. It's 2-1 in the victory score in favor of the Gigabyte Marines. Not exactly where we expected to find ourselves at the start of the day, but TSM are now starting to fight back. However, looking again on the side of Gigabyte Marines, if they want to close it out here, what are the next steps for this team?
So the first thing that we have to look at, again, game number 3 was experimentation with the draft phase from the Gigabyte Marines. They were on red side. They're looking at counter picks, perhaps something that can beat the Syndra, something that can control the bottom lane. And you look at a Sona pick, and it's like Nami, but it does damage. Unfortunately, they lost the lane at level 1, so it never really got the opportunities to shine. They could look at execution, but the easiest way to shore that up is to just fix the draft and pick the Nami so that you don't have that problem.
And I think it's become a lot more difficult post-Game 3 now with TSM identifying that banning the Ziggs, taking away the Karma are two of the safest picks that the Gigabyte Marines have had in the bottom lane. And I think that was a significant change that we now need to see from the Gigabyte Marines how they adjust to that. We did see picks the likes of the Caitlyn, the Varus come out a little bit more. They went towards the Ashe in the first rotation, and that was not necessarily the problem, but alone it didn't save the game for them.
And just quietly, you may even want Wild Total playing the Ashe with his games 1 and 2. But I think the takeaway from this as well is that TSM won with Gigabyte Marines game 1 and 2 team comps. So that is basically, we're looking at the Exodia now moving forwards. If whoever gets the most of these champions, perhaps that's the strongest within these teams.
So I'm curious, Gigabyte Marines have now selected red side in this game. They will get 2 picks in that first round. Do you want to, if you're TSM, are you picking the Gragas? Is Gragas the new priority? Are you picking the Karma if we see the bans remain the same? What do you do here?
I think it's likely the Karma, but I think the Gragas then goes up in priority for the Gigabyte Marines. They thought they could run something like a Renekton into it in the last game. Clearly proven that they couldn't. So I think suddenly maybe the Graves changes to the Gragas. You might want to keep the Ashe still if you want that high engaged potential. If they don't feel like Slay can play too much more against the bottom lane of TSM, that might be where they go. And I think then you adjust the jungle accordingly.
Yeah, I think priority does sit within top lane, jungle to an extent if a champion like Graves is available, and namely the support role. Karma does seem to be the #1 because Lulu and Ivern are the definite and the guaranteed bans there.
On the other side, we kind of talk about mixing up the jungle, making sure you can secure that Gragas for the side of Gigabyte Marines, but TSM, they also need to keep this going. They want to take this to a game 5. Is it as simple as just picking exactly the same composition, trying to go with the same strategy? Do they really have any need to mix it up here?
I don't really think TSM need to mix up what worked for them, obviously, in this game, but they're going to be attacked in a very different way coming into the next draft phase. There's a lot of picks there, pocket picks available for the Gigabyte Marines, and it's about what they get for themselves in the first 3 picks, the solid rotation, the solid champion roles. If Wild Turtle needs engaged, then give him the Ashe early. Take the Karma away from the Gigabyte Marines bottom lane because it feels like they can be exposed a little bit more so, and maybe even take Levi off something like the Lee Sin, off the Kha'Zix, make him play a Graves because the farming isn't the ganking.
Yeah, and I think there's now interesting thing with Gigabyte Marines taking that red side that a lot of these things can add together. That Graves, I think, will work a lot better for them if they, for instance, counterpick the mid lane matchup or get the Gragas to the top lane where you know you're not about to lose the matchups. That's where one of those struggles went, is when you have a utility mid laner that doesn't necessarily have the amount of push in mid and your top laner is getting solo killed 3 times, suddenly Graves goes, oh, I don't have the ability to make plays anymore. It's not the likes of a Lee Sin or an Elise who can still maybe get a catch. You're much more reliant on actually working with your teammates, and that didn't happen in the last game.
At this point in the series has been pretty close, given the stomp we saw from TSM in the last game and the 2 pretty close games for the Gigabyte Marines, game 1 and 2. Who do you think is going to take this one in the end? What do you think is going to be the major factor? We talked about the draft. If both teams get to play the compositions that they want to play, who is looking stronger so far today?
I feel like we're going to game 5. I feel like the adaptations in the draft for now are too much. I don't think that means we're completely out of it for the Gigabyte Marines taking the series, but I think this one game maybe didn't give them enough to build back into a 3-1 win.
That's a safe bet to say that exact same thing, but I look at the early game to see if you can actually get an advantage for the Gigabyte Marines. They can actually close it out.
All right, well, we'll see. I know you guys are hyped about Game 4, so keep tweeting to @LOL Esports with the hashtag MSI2017 to share with us who you think or who you'll be cheering for this series. I know we'll get a lot of votes for TSM, and I'm guessing we've got some new Gigabyte fans as well. But for now, let's send it over to the casters to get us into that Game 4.
Thank you, Dracos. And now it is time for Game 4. Vedius, my friend, TSM have managed to keep the NALCS's dreams alive and well, but now can they do it again and continue along that reverse sweep dream?
Well, that's what TSM certainly hope, and I'm sure that's what a lot of TSM fans want. And as a caster, I love them to win this next game so that we get all 5 games in this best-of-5 series. And I think that regardless, this series is still given more than what people expected, right? The Gigabyte Marines stepping themselves up. TSM being able to showcase that they are still an extremely powerful and dominant team. And now we get to see which style is finally able to come out on top. And I think a big part of it will come down in the draft.
Absolutely will. So much of the difference between Game 3 and then Games 1 and 2 occurred in the drafting phase. And so Gigabyte Marines is trying to find their time machine, go back to then and say, all right, you guys keep picking this stuff that didn't work, and we'll pick the good stuff. And TSM just wants to keep this going the same way that it did right there. So we'll have to see how this fourth one plays out, if TSM can manage to put Gigabyte Marines in a spot where they can't get those picks that they were able to find so much success with.
Well, that's what we're hoping for. And I want to see Levi back on some of these playmakers. I want to see him bring out the Elise, the Lee Sin, maybe even the Kazakhs again as well, because I think that he has the most success on those kind of champions. And while I definitely think he has the ability to play Graves, I think that you need to get him on something that has power. And I want to see Stark back on this Gragas. More priority needs to go to guarantee the Gigabytes have a strong top half of the map.
And remember, last game, it wasn't that Kazakhs was banned away. It's simply that Gigabyte Marines decided they wanted Graves over Kazakhs. So high likelihood they'll probably go back towards that ganking style this game. The bans for TSM are already in, though. Ziggs, Kennen, and LeBlanc all going to be banned away. Their opponents responding with the Shen and the Ivern. Really not liking the idea of those protective style champions.
And probably Lulu will round it out. Very similar to what we saw before. That means that the first pick will likely be the Karma from TSM, and it's not as impressive anymore because this is exactly what happened last game.
This is just a mirror of the previous match.
But now I want to see the Gragas priority. This is what we should expect from the Gigabyte Marines, and there it is, right? So this is much more of what we'd expect. And that's fine. Okay, so they've gone back for the Graves. I don't think this is necessarily a problem. You still have a powerful jungler. You still hold yourself just fine in terms of your early game presence, your ability to invade. They just had one bad gank down in the bottom lane. That's likely just the perception that Levi has. And he said, you know what, guys? I remember, I don't gank bot normally. I'm going to go back to ganking top and mid. So
this isn't normally what I do. I forgot that we don't play around this lane. You guys, I'm just going to leave you alone. Don't worry about it. Svenskeren, he's on the lead, though, for the third time in a row, as it looks like TSM is also going to pick up a big tanky AP top laner to go against a big tanky AP top laner.
So TSM are just mirroring their draft from before. They've identified that this is definitely a composition that can work. I literally even wrote down mirror instead of Nautilus.
What?
I don't know. I don't know why. All right, to round things out, normally you'd expect the AD carry Slay. He's most comfortable. AD is the Ashe. So if he gets that for himself, then he's going to be a pretty happy camper. Now, what we're likely to see from TSM is the same bans as before. You want to ban away... well, actually, no. I don't think they need to ban away the Fizz because you know what the enemy top laner and jungler are. So it probably makes more sense to ban away supports. Champions like... Ooh, you could just ban away the Nami. I don't know if it's worth banning Sona because you've clearly already had a good answer to it before.
Yeah.
And I think that if you're Gigabyte Marines, you just start targeting AD carries. So the Varus and Lucian will probably be taken off the board.
Well, there's the Varus. Gigabyte Marine's going to go ahead and agree with you on that one. TSM thinking about what they want to remove here. They've still got their mid laner and their AD carry to pick. So thinking about what might get in the way of those picks being successful. It looks like Zyra is the choice.
Remember that after the nerfs to Malzahar, he really has fallen off a lot in terms of value. However, Archie has still played it. He played it in the VP game, which they ended up losing. But it's still a pick that they could go for, even if it's not as optimal as, say, it used to be in the past. I feel like the Nami would make more sense here, which is why I would expect TSM to ban that one away, given just the strength of the champion.
Well, Ezreal removed by Gigabyte Marines, deciding they don't want to allow Turtle on that one again. Turtle's problems with putting himself in precarious situations are significantly alleviated when you have a built-in flash on a 10-second cooldown.
Yep. But now he's probably just going to go for the Lucian, right? Like, it was banned away from him before. With the other utility carries taken off the board, it just makes the most sense. The only other exception to the rule that I would expect would possibly be the Caitlyn. But I feel like Lucian would much better fit in his bandwagon. That would give you a powerful pushing lane down bottom.
Well, Gigabyte Marines thinking about that Fizz. And it is locked in there for the mid lane.
The blind pick Fizz. Interesting. So in terms of, I mean, like, his laning kind of sucks early on. Once he gets level 6, his ability to all in is very good. And if Bjergsen wants to match to that, I guess the best pick would actually be to pick some kind of an assassin into him. Ever since the changes to Fizz, Kassadin was often considered actually a pretty strong pick, and with the recent changes, you could go for it, but there's also a large element of risk if you end up falling behind hard early. So instead, you just go for a safer option. I think that Orianna is absolutely fine in terms of being able to trade early and in terms of her ability to scale later on.
Well, Ori and Kate are the pickups on the side of TSM. You said that Lucian is what you were expecting, but Kate was also a possibility, and it looks like they want to go with a little bit safer, longer range of an option. Also, can't forget what Caitlyn brings to sieges and siege defense scenarios with all those cupcakes.
Oh, there is always the possibility that this is a Gragas support, and they actually end up picking something slightly different in the top. Remember that you could still send the Fizz up to the top lane. Oh, no, okay.
Nope,
They're just
Nami
going to stick
support.
with the standard stuff. Nami is absolutely fine into the Karma. But yeah, I think that this Fizz pick is definitely a big risk. During the early laning phase, it is really rough. Arguably, it's even harder against the Orianna because of the low cooldown on her Q and just how much damage her basic attacks do and every time Fizz tries to farm. But she has very similar issues too, in the sense that she is a low mobility mid lane mage and she is very susceptible to ganks. So the moment that Optimus does hit level 6, then that is a dangerous lane.
It's a prime target.
Exactly.
For Levi to slide in there and look to make a play. Speaking of Levi, eyes on him like they usually are when you watch Gigabyte Marines, but especially now after having a subpar game number 3, one where he essentially gifted double buffs and a kill over to his opponents as his opening gambit. This time he needs to change it up. This time he needs to make sure that he's doing that same job he did in games 1 and 2 and getting everybody on the board.
But Gigabyte Marines, they still have that 1-game buffer. Remember that they're 2-1 up over teams TSM.
Right.
It's not really, again, like we talk about a lot, but it very much goes against the expectations. It is TSM that are fighting for their lives, and while if either team loses, they will still get another opportunity. You still play one best of 5 against the loser of tomorrow's series.
So you don't want to be that team.
You definitely don't.
You're not playing this to say, okay, it's cool. We don't care about this one.
Yeah.
We'll just win the other one.
Yeah, exactly.
Win this one, punch your ticket, and relax this weekend.
Completely agree with you, Captain Flowers. Let's see if the Gigabyte Marines can secure their ticket, or if TSM has said, hang on a second, you might need to refund that.
Yeah, I'll have to see if they have to go ahead, get a receipt along with it. As we're opening into Summoner's Rift for the 4th time today. Gigabyte Marines fans wishing that this game didn't even have to be played. TSM fans breathing a collective sigh of relief that we're still here.
The fans as ecstatic as ever. 4 games, TSM being pushed to the brink.
Brazil's been a hell of a crowd so far.
Oh, they really have.
Imagine what it'll be like once we actually get to the main stage of MSI 2017 in the upcoming weeks. Should be even crazier. As TSM takes the defensive stance, 5-man line, point for point.
And remember what you said, Captain Flowers. The level 1 plays from TSM lost them games. The
Yep.
game that they didn't do a level 1 play, they won. Coincidence? I think not.
You just stand around, don't do anything stupid at level 1, and you can't put yourself on your back foot before the minions even collide. TSM, happy to play this one slow at the start, not looking for any unnecessary disadvantages to come their way by level 1 accidents.
I like how we saw actually grouping. Look, you can see the 3-man unit of Levi, Optimus, and Stark hanging around the Raptors in the event that they saw another invade. Ooh, in the bottom lane, though.
Okay, this is just going to start off about like that, huh? Turtle misses Piltover Peacemaker, but Archie's still going to be in some trouble potentially here. Slay getting himself back. Final headshot comes out, but Turtle and Bio both looking pretty worse for wear as Slay is essentially full HP.
Now, bear in mind, he's also gone for the long sword with 3 health pots, so he's definitely been the one to come out ahead on this. Archie's going to get a lot of sustain. So now the Gigabyte Marines are just looking to get themselves the push. They want to get that level 2 so they can start being more aggressive in this bottom lane, take more control, and force this Caitlyn Karma back, which is great, because normally what you would expect is that Caitlyn Karma is all about that pushing, that hard shove. Until he's actually going to go back. I guess he's going to have to.
He knows that there's no way that he has no presence in this lane.
Yeah. Wow, that is a rough start to the bottom lane of TSM.
Very difficult to deal with, but that's what you get sometimes when you go for that all-in at level 1. Optimus being shoved in by Bjergsen very early, which of course, that's what you expect. Like you said, his lane pretty much sucks.
Yep.
So he's going to struggle against somebody like Orianna.
He certainly will. He is going for the TP and Corrupting Potion, so basically what you do in that matchup is you just sacrifice your life to get as much farm as you can. Ideally, you want to go back to base at level 4, and you can either pick yourself up a Dark Seal, which is what's commonly built, and an Amtone, or you get yourself a Dark Seal and a Doran's Ring, so you have a little bit more early trading power for that level 6 spike that you want to try and take advantage of. And then you can just TP back into the lane.
Well, Optimus getting aggressive onto Bjergsen, not willing to just let him bully him around, no consequence. Levi, here we go. It's 3 minutes in, Vedius. It's time to go into the enemy jungle.
He's pinging mids.
Bjergsen's very far forward.
But notice how he's playing to the top side of the lane. He's very aware of where Levi is. And so by playing to the top half of his lane, along with the presence of Svenskeren in mid, he's almost baiting it with the anticipation of being able to get the counter gang.
Bjergsen getting some more damage down. Playful Trickster to dodge that last Clockwork windup. Both supports were also very aware of that situation in mid, both ready to rotate, become involved if they had to be.
Yeah, and that was actually a really bad trade from Optimus as well, because now he's going to be forced back earlier than he would have liked. Oh, okay, this is actually pretty good for him. It would have been worse if Bjergsen stuck around, because he can now pick up this farm, go back to base, and he'll still do his standard plan of return to lane with the TP with the extra bit of items that he's been able to get for himself. So it's not all end too badly for Optimus in the middle lane.
Well, Levi's early plan once again doesn't go his way. Luckily for him and his team, this time it doesn't end up with a death, but it's also not him getting them rolling. This is not the Gigabyte Marines' success strategy from games number 1 and 2, just because that early window wasn't available, really.
I'm impressed that Haunts has got like a whole 2 waves on top of Stark. I'm not entirely sure how that happened.
Haunts is really turning things up.
Oh, he is. Oh, he certainly is.
Turning things up this series as it's gone on, I should say.
Just warming up, you know, like
Yeah, the first
maybe it
games
was
he had to
chilly
get going. And you know, I was actually looking at this as one of the factors that I was going to consider as this game went on, is the Gigabyte Marines have been playing the past week. They've been involved in round 1 of the play-in stage. TSM have been practicing. They've been preparing. But that doesn't mean that they've actually got to play against any of these teams that come from different regions and play a different style of League of Legends than what they're used to. So it might have taken TSM those first couple of games to really just warm up and get in the right flow of things to know how to deal with this.
So far, things are certainly going well. Mid has the slight CS advantage. Top surprisingly has the CS advantage. And in the bottom lane, even after the early deficit, while Turtle and Bifrost have been able to reclaim some of the control that they had with the powerful push of Karma and Caitlyn, they're forcing Slay and Archie underneath that turret, and what was a big CS advantage has now equalized out.
And that Gragas, that top lane pick that we were talking about taking priority, is currently behind still compared to Haunter.
Oh, here we go.
As the mid lane play happens, Bjergsen's going to be bursted low, flashing away. Does not matter. The damage between a Fizz and a Graves is way too much. Bjergsen spins the flash.
Lars, do you remember we were talking something about like around the level 6 mark that some kind of target ends up around the mid lane?
Yeah, it's almost like that's exactly what these two are trying to coordinate, and it's almost like that is exactly point for point the textbook Gigabyte Marines game plan.
Oh, for sure. This is clearly something that they have done before. The classic synergy, the well-known synergy of Levi and Optimus. He gets the level 6. Bjergsen isn't even having his ultimate available yet, and they instantly punish. Levi's already in position. They're able to get a very swift kill.
And you can tell the communication between these players on this team as well, just because of the fact that they're saying, hey, I'm level 6 in 5 creeps or whatever. Make sure you're here. Make sure you're ready. We're just going to make this play. Meanwhile, bottom side, Slay and Archie still enjoying themselves a pretty comfortable laning phase. Turtle and Biofrost had gotten back, chopped up a little bit. BF sword on Turtle, so Slay's going to want to get himself back and shop as soon as possible to make sure he's not outdone in the item department. Haunter gets thrown back into the turret with a very nice cask. Luckily, Svenskeren is there to keep him alive, but that was way too close.
Yeah, that could very well have resulted in Haunter's death. Now, bear in mind, he does have the flash available, but look at where Levi is. He's just about to pick up his red buff. I think Svenskeren... Oh! Stark!
Okay. Stark says, remember last game? Your turn.
I was not expecting that. Horton wasn't expecting that. He was just like, it's fine, guys. I've got flash. I have a shield. And then Stark is like, the belly bop slam.
Just instantly sees that opportunity and takes it. Meanwhile, Bjergsen again going to be jumped on, tries to go for the shockwave play onto Levi to make it a 1-for-1, but cannot do it. Svenskeren coming in there trying to mop this up if he can. Biofrost looking to make the play onto Levi, manages to burn him down, but now Sven and Bio both going to be caught up in the bubble. That arrow doesn't find anyone. It's a 1-4 game for TSM as the Gigabyte Marines are off to a very nice start.
But this is the kind of start that the Gigabyte Marines want. They're being proactive, they're making plays happen, and they're doing it around the superstar player Optimus. This guy on Fizz just punishing the fact that he has the all-in power, but Levi is always there, ready and waiting. Notice he even takes tower aggro right at the start and flashes out of the way of the shockwave too. Archie's here to provide support should you need it, and sure, Biofrost is able to get the flash ignite down to Levi, but all you're doing is transferring that red buff onto this already overfed fish.
2-0-1 on the Fizz. Sorcerer's Shoes done. Hex Tech Revolver running, working towards that Proto Belt. Make him even that much scarier. Meanwhile, the top lane, although Stark is still slightly behind in farm, getting that kill allowed him to buy the Spectre's Cowl. So the trades are going to be a little bit harder for Haunter as the lane goes on.
Gragas is a really strong champion.
I'm beginning to kind of come to that conclusion, my friend. He seems to be very potent in the games that we've seen him in so far.
Oh yeah. I think coming into the main MSI event, he will be a big talking point, big power pick in particular. So let's have a look. Now, this is something that the Gigabyte Marines did against Lion, where they very early on moved Optimus down to the bottom half of the map. Now, with the vision around the entrance to the bottom river, TSM are fully aware of this play happening. Now, I wonder if Optimus is just going to try and set up a trap, but no, he will get spotted out, and instead, Gigabyte Marines just wanted to have a bit of a taste test, see how TSM would react.
They back themselves away, though. Aren't going to make any crazy decisions. Nothing completely reckless, go for a 50-50, hope we get it, and then turn the fight into a total fiesta. Instead, they want to play this one slowly, play it confidently. Set something up and then make those rotations, make those big decisive calls that we talked about this team being so adept at making. Slay, 78 farm compared to the 91 of Wild Turtles, so the early lane advantage these two had on the side of the Marines not really translating into much as time has gone on. Turtle and Biofrost have done a good job regaining their footing and regaining control of that lane.
Very much what you expect in a Caitlyn Karma. Even if you put them down, they find a way back. The arrow hits Turtle.
Arrow hits Turtle, flashing himself away from the bubble, getting away from the wave follow-up. It looked dicey there for a second, but TSM gets their bottom lane out.
The bubble was just slightly too slow. If it had come out just at the edge, then Wild Turtle wouldn't have been able to get his flash, and that likely would have resulted in a kill in favor of the Gigabyte Marines. So at the very least, it would have forced Wild Turtle back so they can start knocking on the doors of that tower. But now you see the Gigabyte Marines, they know they have... Oh, interesting, Archie's actually just gone back, and they still feel confident enough to go for this Drake as TSM go top lane.
Svenskeren kicking Stark back as he makes his body slam forwards, trying to stay on top of him long enough to get something happening here. A shockwave to seal his fate, and Svenskeren will grab TSM their second kill of the game. Meanwhile, Infernal Drake was taken by Gigabyte Marines on the other end of the map, seeing the TSM jungler topside. Now TSM wants to try to get this turret if they can. Turret First Blood is the kind of thing you need to trade for an Infernal Drake to not fall too far behind.
Now, look at this, right? So the response from TSM is actually to move their bottom lane to mid because they know that Archie isn't there, so they think that with the wave clear of Caitlyn Karma, they can actually defend this tower and come out ahead of the play. But when you have a Graves, the ability to siege that tower is so much stronger that Optimus might go for the all-in.
Going for it and finding it. Turtle is out of there. Optimus now going to be locked down a little bit by Bio as Haunter makes his way into the fight. Going to be juggling him around and smacking him down. Shutdown credit goes over to Bio, who's 2-1-0 on that Karma as TSM will lose their mid lane turret, but they got turret First Blood topside beforehand. Now Stark finding a little bit of damage onto Svenskeren, who continues chasing after him. Dragon's Rage not available now, will be soon. TSM currently ahead by just a couple hundred gold.
It comes off the back of being able to get that first Tower Blood. The fact that Gigabyte Marines could respawn in the mid lane was the best decision that they could have made. And Wild Turtle, he doesn't respect the all-in power. We've seen it time and time again. I feel like he is positioning in a way that is fairly defensive, but then at the same time, you're a little bit too close to that fish. But I love this TP from Haunter as well. We talked about it earlier on in the series and how, as a top laner, he's very quick to respond to anything that their opponents might quite make. And the fact that he does TP in there allows TSM to at the very least get a kill back. So they end up trading 1-for-1 in terms of turrets and kills, meaning that Gigabyte Marines don't get too far ahead in the play.
Still a very, very close game overall. An Infernal Drake and 500 gold, the two things separating the teams, but that's not really a whole lot, just 13 minutes in. Spirit Visage done now for Haunter, completing that first big item, gonna make him very difficult to really do any meaningful damage to for Stark. While mid lane, the Proto Belt on the Fizz. That's such a scary prospect because you saw how much damage Turtle took. It was essentially the Fizz ult, the Playful Trickster, and the Graves ult, and he died from 100%.
He did. Squishy Caitlyn is indeed quite squishy against belts and fish. Now, the Optimus is actually moving in the bottom lane, but notice how the rest of the team is following up.
Svenskeren using the kick as a disengage to keep himself safe. Haunter down here defending, not really too worried about anything, just slap and slay around. Makes him lose about half his HP. Optimus now gonna be caught out in a really precarious situation here. Ace in the hole comes through. Haunter gonna be juggled. Not really much more to find with it. TSM will hold the line there, and that was a little bit sketchy coming out from the Gigabyte Marines. But they didn't have that coordinated.
It was also a very good response from Team Solomon because they realized that this dive was happening thanks to the vision that they had in their jungle, which meant that Wild Turtle and Bifrost were already on the way bot, and Svenskeren was there lying in wait. So he gets the kick down onto one of the members of the Gigabyte Marines, prevents that dive from happening after Optimus misses his ultimate. So I feel like, while, as you rightly said, there's an element of poor coordination from the side of Gigabyte Marines, it's also just TSM responding in the best way that they could have.
Meanwhile, Slay getting himself caught out here by the dredge line. Levi now returning some nice damage, utilizing the power of the ultimate, as TSM has all 5 members onto this tier 1 turret bottom side, and they are not leaving without it.
And they're taking advantage. Ooh, TP is coming in from Optimus.
Immediately canceled. Not wanting to jump into that, realizing that his team is not in a spot where he would do anything but really die there. Might get off some decent damage before he did, but he wasn't taking anybody with him immediately, so he has to cancel it. Instead, just keep trying to put in some damage onto this top lane tier 1. There's no teleport up for Haunter, so he can't just TP to that and stop it. Looks like TSM's just going to choose to yield this one.
Yeah. What we saw was Optimus, he was down bot, and then the rest of Gigabyte Marines decided to stick around the bottom half of the map. But TSM identified that there are only 3 members with Levi, Slay, and Archie. And so TSM decided, you know what? You can't really take anything in mid because we already lost our tower. You've sent your Fizz up top lane, and even if your TP's in, we're a 5-man unit. So we're just going to group up and siege onto this tier 1 in the bottom lane, and they're able to get it for themselves. But the towers are still even. So overall, the game is still there. Even after Gigabyte Marines seem to have such a powerful start, you expect like, oh, now they're going to snowball off of this lead. TSM is still being very smart in the way they respond. And I think this is super important because they're no longer caving to the skirmish style that Gigabyte Marines like to play. Instead, they're looking at it from a holistic perspective, and they're saying, okay, our mid lane is 0-2. We can move him around the map. We can use his ball to help siege and take down these outer structures to keep us even in the goal.
TSM refusing to play the Gigabyte Marine strategy is very important for being able to hold on in this early game, because when Gigabyte Marines gets to play that strategy, when Gigabyte Marines can lure you into that trap and make you take those 2v2s, those 3v3s, those small skirmishes, they're exactly where they want to be, and we've seen what this team looks like when they can be where they want to be.
Here comes the TP flank from Stark. They want to try and force a fight.
Enchanted Crystal Arrow goes wide left, and the engage is over. Dredge line coming back, will not be finding anyone. Marines still thinking about maybe looking to make something happen with Optimus off the flank here, but the control ward from TSM did see him come in towards that bush. Very low amount of HP still remaining under this tier 1.
The problem for Gigabyte Marines is that TSM want to be grouped up as a 5-man unit. Optimus, while he certainly can have a big impact in these fights, Orianna can have an even bigger one. That shockwave can so very quickly swing the fight in Gigabyte Marine's favor, and as long as TSM are playing smooth and smart and just gradually sieging onto the turret, they can use that ball as a zoning tool to get themselves an objective and get themselves further ahead in the goal.
There you go, another objective, another little gold boost, and now they've got the track to Dragon. Is mountain number 1 this game. It has been a day of mountains and infernals. There's been so many of these damn things. I don't think I've seen a single Cloud Drake.
Are you sad about that?
Not even a little bit. These make it so much more exciting. These are the ones people will fight over. As the top lane tier 2 for TSM under some pressure. Haunter trying to defend this as long as he can. But it's a 5-man move from the Gigabyte Marines. And TSM can't defend it now. Haunter trying to go back into this. I don't know if that was a decision he wants to stick by as he's juggled back into the team. Not a good death, the TSM top laner.
Yeah, now, bear in mind, TSM, they just want to stop the backs because Bjergsen is sitting in the bottom lane. TP has just come up for Optimus, but he doesn't have his ulti anymore. So I don't know if you could confidently wave through and hold this tower against Bjerg. Instead, TSM, they're going to hold off, and they're just going to reset the game. Now, I think that was a big mistake from Haunter. He shouldn't have stuck around that tower when it was guaranteed to go down against 5 members. I think it was a bit of an oversight, lack of respect, and Gigabyte Marines keeping the game extremely close. 3-3 in towers. The gold is basically even. But with the TP gone for Optimus as well, it limits the ability for the Gigabyte Marines to effectively use their 1-3-1.
I mean, the first time that we see a big fight happen this game, the first time that there's something that really just explodes, like full-on 5v5, that's going to determine a lot about the tempo for the rest of the game just because of how close this has stayed so far. Any little thing, any little mistake that turns into a couple of kills could be that much more impactful than it would otherwise be.
And this is the kind of game that I really wanted, because in Game 3 it was definitely a one-sided stomp from TSM, which is great. But in terms of competitiveness, you want to see both these teams really bringing out their best. You want to see them really fighting for that spot. And I think it's difficult to say that the Gigabyte Marines cheese their way into victories, right? These guys have been sticking to a style that works for them, and they have been forcing TSM to find new ways in order to adapt. And I think that TSM have done a great job of adapting throughout the series. But now we're also seeing the same kind of adaptation from the Gigabyte Marines. They're slowing down their style. They're not being too reckless with the way in which they try and force things. And that's what's resulted in this very close Game 4, which could punch a ticket for Gigabyte Marines to the main MSI event.
And you know, we talked in Games 1 and 2 about Gigabyte Marines not just being a team that was able to confuse their opponents by playing this really fast, really hard style, but at the same time, once they got into the team fights, they looked good in them.
Oh, they did. It was very enjoyable to watch the way in which they coordinated. They knew when to hard engage and when to just slowly kite or gradually chase. It was very enjoyable to watch, but then the same again for TSM. These guys, when they get that lead, they are just so effective at knowing where to put it. The way in which they invest their vision, the way in which they took that Baron in Game 3 was just very clean. You can see that these guys do understand how to play League of Legends. But when the game is neutral, I put my bets towards TSM. I feel like they're a team that is more used to being in this position. They know how to play the neutral game, and it's going to come very much down to how well these teams can control vision and who will be the first to make that slight misstep.
And that goes back to the unfamiliarity that you would expect the Gigabyte Marines to be experiencing right now, considering they have been such a dominant force in their region for so long. They didn't really have much of a competitor in the GPL. It was just Gigabyte Marines. They beat everybody. That's what they do. So now how do they handle this neutral territory as TSM comes for the collapse onto the top laner? Flash away from Stark. Will shut that down immediately. Explosive cast used as well just to make sure TSM doesn't get anything else here. The counter push will come up from the Marines here in mid lane as Sven and Turtle come in from behind to try to threaten them. They're gonna have Biofrost here with them as well. They might go for this 3v3. Gotta be careful about it though. Levi does so much damage. Cannon gonna be smited just to try to slow the push down, but it will not find any success. And with Optimus rotating over, that's gonna go well for them too, as Stark dies in the bottom lane, but it's the mid lane inhibitor turret that's now being knocked down by the Gigabyte Marines. TSM trying to come and collapse on this in time, but that is now an exposed inhib. Gigabyte Marines getting the better of the rotations here.
And they're continuing with the chase. Biofrost goes in.
Nice flash over the wave to keep himself in range, get some extra damage down. But the Marines have disengaged for now. Haunter making his way into the fight. Dredgeline gonna be flashed away from too. Haunter looking for a little bit more. Flashes forward, Riptide into the auto attack into the lockdown as Optimus has been behind the rest of TSM, and he finds the kill on the Turtle as the Shockwave makes the kill. 2 fish down as Levi comes back into the fight, looking to finish off Bjerg, but it is not gonna happen today. Stark now trying to fight 1 versus 2 against the remainder of TSM, but as the last man standing, He's just got to walk away.
And think of the numbers advantage that Team Solo Mid now have. The Baron is available. Bjergsen is looking amazing, being able to survive both Levi and Optimus. Exactly the big wide window that TSM needed in order to get this objective.
Stark's got to be some kind of a hero here if he wants to stop it, and a hero he will be! Bjergsen forced to run back, keeping himself alive now with the shield. Stark gets a kill onto one, but he stops the Baron.
He did everything that he needed to do. It doesn't matter that he died, and it doesn't matter that he only got the kill onto Bifrost. But let's have a look at this. Optimus comes in from the flank, and Waltula just takes so much damage. And you think at this point, oh, Bjergsen's in a lot of trouble, but this is the power of Orianna in this matchup. She has the ability to just have low cooldown. She has the added shield to mitigate a lot of the passive damage, and her trading power is very strong. Look at how this shield is always up and ready, and it just mitigates so much of the dueling power. And the fact that Bifrost is there to just make things even harder, that resulted in him getting a lot of those kills and a lot of this gold. But now we see Levi and Optimus perhaps caught between a rock and a hard place.
Oh, Svenskeren kicks Optimus away, but now eats a lot of burst from Levi. Turtle, oh no! That was an interactive gameplay experience that he just enjoyed versus that Fizz. Ult into Proto Belt into Q. See ya!
But also, why was Wild Turtle there? Running down the river, giving Optimus a prime avenue not only to escape, but also to somehow win out on that fight. We talked a lot about it, the positioning of Wild Turtle. I can give him the benefit of the doubt in that top lane play, but there, I mean, like, there's no reason to be running down the river. Take the safe route as the arrow hits on the Bio.
Uh-oh, speaking of why are you there, Biofrost going to be eating a lot of damage on this one. Wave comes out, Bio still knocked
Optimus
back. Levi making his way into the fight. Bjergsen throwing the shockwave on himself, but it's not enough, and two fall on TSM. Gigabyte Marines, now remember they've got this inhibitor exposed. And the push will come down mid lane. The traps just do not matter. They'll walk right over him and take this in him.
And this is the skirmish style of the Gigabyte Marines. They find a random pick. Are they? No, no way.
Actually trying this?
This is risky.
Okay, Gigabyte Marines, they want to end this game. Monster's got to stop them somehow. Slay going to be knocked up. The damage coming through. Svenskeren looking to finish him off. He does successfully do so. Turtle is killed on spawn, but the rest of the Marines have been routed. Stark and Levi have to try to leave this one, but Haunter with the lockdown, and Sven is here trying to stay on top of Stark. They managed to get all four. Now can they get Stark too? He stopped the Baron last time. They don't want to see it happen again.
Gigabyte Marines, they go for such a risky play. They tried to end the game, and instead of ending it, they actually tried to get themselves more kills. That was the worst possible thing that you could have done, because now, TSM, they have 4 members alive. They're looking at the Baron, and this is going to give them the lead to get them back into this game.
That looked real scary for a second for TSM, but now an overextension by the Gigabyte Marines puts TSM back in a better spot than they were to begin with. Turtle will clear out the top lane. Wave that's just colliding into that turret.
Just like, it's this decision. If you're going to go for it, then you just hit the towers. But instead, look, Levi and Stark, they go straight onto Wild Turtle. Optimus is trapped here because he can't really do much for the backline that ends up getting demolished by Svenskeren and Haunter. And this was just way too greedy for the Gigabyte Marines. They were in such a good spot. Look at top lane. They just took themselves an inhibitor. They could have gained all this free vision around the top half of TSM's jungle and then set up for the Baron later on. And now instead they've given that Baron over to TSM.
Now how does TSM use it? That is the question. To get Baron is one thing. To have a big juicy Baron power play is another. This team currently has 4 turrets under their belt. So 2 tier 2s still left to push on there in the top and middle lanes. Bio, Bjerg, and Sven grouped up, pushing, seeing what they can accomplish here. The Gigabyte Marines actually backing from the bottom side of the TSM jungle, thinking that maybe somebody was going to come through there, but that's just not the plan.
Or maybe they go for a sneaky base race, but there's still 2 in it.
Yeah,
2 towers up, you don't have a minion wave. Either way,
Enchanted Crystal Arrow finds its way onto Turtle,
he's fine, he's fine.
but yeah.
This
no
time
way
he
to
was
collapse
baiting
that.
it, right? That's
Yeah,
what
this time
doing.
he was in a spot where it was all good. All gravy. Svenskeren always looking for that opportunity on the front line to be the vanguard, to be the guy who knocks someone out of position and opens this game up for them. Now it's TSM's turn, Vedius, to pressure onto the inhibitor lines and see what they can find. Optimus wants the flank, always setting himself up off to the side. Svenskeren will zone him for now as Turtle sets up the trap line. This is what we mentioned with the Caitlyn pick. The siege and anti-siege scenarios are huge for this champion just because of how well she controls zones.
But look at the flank.
Cass
Goodbye,
not
Marine.
finding much of anything. That's a pretty big cooldown to have down now. That's a lot of threat. No longer available for Gigabyte Marines to knock someone out of position. As Optimus comes in from behind, the turret goes down. Optimus having to run, Protobelt to escape. Haunter on the front line, not able to find that dredge line onto a target that matters. Turtle pouring auto attacks into the inhibitor itself. Stark still wanting to come in from behind if he can. Inhibitor down to half, down to a third, down to a quarter. Adios! The last auto attack does it. Stark finds his way into the fight. Haunter going to be stoking up the fish, though. A nice shockwave onto 2. Slay's going to be chased down by the ulti. Turtle falls to Optimus. Slay still alive. Optimus Zonia's trying to get himself out of this one. Haunter looking to chase him down. A little bit more damage will do it. Stark's going to be going down next. 3 dead on the side of Gigabyte Marines. And TSM might just be able to make it happen here.
They have the Baron-empowered minions. They have the teleport from Haunter. Only Optimus and Archie is left to stop them. TSM, they're going to bring us to a game 5.
Haunter coming back into the fight. Svenskeren keeping Optimus away. They've got to just burn these turrets down. Archie's going to be going to, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be going to the final match as TSM will take down Gigabyte Marines and tie this sucker up.